And we're live. Welcome, episode 56, In Class with Carr. Let me first say good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome. Hello, everyone from all around the world. And of course, Dr. Carr, good afternoon, sir.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, good day, my dear Professor Hunter. And thank you again for creating this space one step at a time.
Yeah, I was watching the Falcon and the White Soldier or something before I came in.
And we're Panther, no, White Wolf, Winter Soldier,
whatever the hell, Marvel.
With my man Isaiah. Oh, we talked about Isaiah Bradley, if you remember.
But
anyway,
okay, because I think we should have a whole dissemination of what that is. But as I was coming in, I had called you earlier today because I was like, I think we need to talk about the Suez Canal. I don't know how it all connects, but I'm reading these stories, and you were like, wait a minute, what? So I want to start there. We don't plan these things out. And so, outside of like, okay, let's remember we got to talk about Haiti. Maybe we should talk about gun violence. So I just throw things out and I was like, how are we going to contain this? And how do we sew a thread through it? I don't know how you do it, but you somehow managed to do it. So I'm just going to sit back and toss that up and tell us where we're going today.
Well, no. Well, it's interesting. Like we said before, way back many episodes ago, many class sessions ago, when he was telling this story when I was on Broadway and the brother was doing the picture, and he told the story about how he charged like $50 to sketch this lady's picture, and the lady's boyfriend was like, "Why I gotta pay you $50? It took you 10 minutes." And he said, "Yeah, 30 years in 10 minutes, brother." So even though we don't talk during the week or a lot, we touch base with, this is years. And so, John Henry Clark used to always say this, a teacher who is committed to the craft, to her craft, to his craft in their subject should be able to draw the connections and the parallels. A lot of teaching is really about connection, as we both know as teachers. It's about helping students who know something, and we all know something, connect what they know to what they don't know. And I think one of the most powerful tools in the toolbox of a master teacher, those who we aspire to be like, is metaphor. What is this like? So instead of thinking of the Suez Canal, for example, as just a canal, as just a waterway that has now separates two continents. And we know that the Suez Canal separates the continent of Africa from part of itself. When we think of the so-called Saudi Peninsula, the Saudi Arabia, as we would call it now, Yemen, that's part of Africa. It was since the beginning, since all the landmass was bunched up together. But as continental drift continues to go in the world, Pangea, right? Pangea, that when the continents were all together, we can see like pieces of a puzzle as they drift where they fit before. Africa, 1/5 of the world's landmass above ocean, is the continent that has drifted the least in continental drift. It's been the one that stayed the most stationary. And so the Suez Canal, go ahead.
As I was thinking about today, and trying to wrap my brain around where we go and how we weave in all of this, I was thinking about, the entry point of all these things, and even watching the damn Marvel thing is Africa, is us.
No question.
And, and as we grapple with, what happened in Georgia, and as we grapple with even, this thing I was watching where they had to come up with a new Captain America who's a white man because we need a hero. We need a hero. But that hero couldn't exist without that vibranium, without those Black people around him supporting him. And so I was sitting there and I was like, as we start to continue to do this, as we confirm the things that we know in our DNA, ancestrally, it's important that we have these discussions as we talk about, the Suez Canal, that means we may not get toilet paper and stuff because, that ship is jammed. But how do we relate to that? What's going on with Haiti? How do we relate to that? I know you can do that. So
what I hope I can help contribute to, along with you and all the folks who are in this growing nation, and y'all make sure y'all go over there to narrative and really get, so we can do the deeper dives. And that means everybody's participating. That's really the ultimate objective, in all of this.
Let me just put an underscore to that.
Please do, please do.
I've been watching a lot. I sit on a radio show where I have a lot of people come on and they talk
No
about different things, and there's a conversation about civil rights leaders doing commercials for Cadillac and things, and everyone needs to eat, and everyone has a vision for what kind of life they want to live. And if your dollar is tied to things, and particularly when you're doing that hard work, it's thankless. We know that King died penniless. We know that Malcolm died penniless. We know that, that so many of our civil rights leaders sacrificed everything to have nothing. And so now the paradigm has shifted where there's money available for folk to both live as millionaires and also do the work. I don't know how that sits with some folk, but I know here for us, and I don't want to disparage or talk about anybody else, but what we're doing. When you dropped that thing about Carter G. Woodson, and we started this organic conversation last year during the height of the pandemic, a light bulb went on. We don't need to beg anybody. We don't need to, and this is why this Central Africa conversation must be had. We're at the center, like you said, move the least. It is the center. It is the largest. All of these continents can fit inside the continent of Africa. We're talking about China. We're talking about all of the North America, all of that, Japan, Russia, all can fit inside of Africa. That's how big the landmass is. So it's the center of the world. And we're the center of the world. So we need to be able to monetize our own situations. And by monetize, I mean have a vision for what this is going to be. All of you who have joined Narrative from the beginning know that this is just the ground level of bricks that are being laid in a pyramid that is going to span hundreds of years, thousands of years, hopefully, if we do this right, and will provide us with everything we need, both visually, audio-wise, books, all of that. That's the grand vision. So you're not buying something.
No, you're part of
something. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to say that.
No, you're part of something, and I'm glad you said that, because this foundation is made of us, and this structure is made of us. The thing that contemporary movement workers, and I like the way Claiborne Carson describes it. They ask him, well, where did you mark the civil rights movement? We can't really mark. You just talk about the Black freedom struggle, which began when somebody put their hands on you, on your ancestor on the continent, and that Black freedom struggle is global. And in the United States, there's no need to talk about a civil rights movement, a long civil rights movement, a Black power movement. I mean, all these are labels which ultimately empty into a larger label, which is a liberation struggle. And what is that struggle really about? That struggle is about the struggle to live fully. And when we look at these contemporary debates or discussions, rather than, and everything is subject to analysis, to critique, to discussion, but we can't ever lose sight of the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective is to live fully. Now, the obstacles to living fully have shifted over the years as human beings have moved through time and space. And so we'll talk a little bit about what animates folks like the very terrified Brian Kemp. And you should be terrified, sir, because, with your corn pone fake accent, until you looked over in there and saw your staff moving and didn't know what was going on, at which point you said, what's going on over there? Yeah, you changed your accent. Caught you, little fella, while the sister was knocking at your door, and apparently your little, flaccid fleshed stormtroopers, who the only thing keeping their torsos together is that Kevlar bulletproof vest, decided to lay hands on her. Thank God Henry Maneil Turner wasn't there. We're going to talk about Henry Turner in a minute, but what is animating all that is fear. And what has changed since the iteration of the Black freedom movement of the 60s and 70s to now, of course, even over the last 20 years, has been social media, the explosion of social media. And so what do you do when the algorithms which govern social media, including this platform, which is why, Professor Hunter, you're always telling us to hit that like button and alter the algorithms so that these come up in your feeds. Those algorithms adapt to people who are inclined to search for certain things. And what we're calling white nationalism now, finally in the country, some of us have been calling it what it has been since the beginning, those algorithms are adapting to, people who are inclined and have external reasons to be more inclined to search for other explanations than the ones in front of their face. Why am I poor? Why do I feel upset? Let me go look for it. And as they look for it, it increases exponentially through QAnon, through 4chain, 8chain, whatever you want to call it, right? And so ultimately what we're doing here on Saturdays and now, and this is just like you say, this is just the welcome mat, the front door. When you go into narrative, then you see what we are continuing to do, and everyone is part of that, bringing what we know together. We're punching through the noise, through the static, and we're joining other people who are punching. There are a lot of people out there punching. That's why I don't question motives as much. When I see, somebody like a Tamika Mallory at the Grammys, I mean, the motives, it's difficult now because at some point we have to figure out how can we punch through the static to get a little thing in. So somebody says, oh, okay, so now let me get engaged, because that's really how movements work. So we're building this, all of us, everyone in this conversation, everybody listening to us now, everybody typing stuff, and everybody thinking, people who are going to join us in a second in the discussion we have. We're punching through the static, and the more of us who punch together, the more we can get through the static, and the more resources we have. Now, and it's interesting. People have been saying, you hold up books, you talk about books, then I go look for the book, and the book is $1 million. Professor Hunter, you say, well, he's been buying books for 30, 35 years, almost 40 years. And I say, yeah, it's not, if those, one of the reasons we've built this piece and we're building this and continue to really develop it is so that you don't have to do all that. But for those of you who do, you don't have to have when would you have time? But if you do get it, then the question is discussion. Study. That's what we're doing on the narrative side. We need discussion. We build things together. And while we're doing that, we're telling our stories. As we're seeing every week, people are coming in saying, well, this is my piece of it. This is what I did. This is what my ancestors did. This is what we're doing. And that is where the momentum comes. And that struggle, the ultimate human struggle, is to live fully. But there are 2 steps that precede it. And they have emerged over the arc of the last several centuries and have intensified over the last century, especially the last half century. And this last 20 years, through the explosion of social media, has created such a wall of static that it's difficult to see beyond that wall to the forces, meaning living human beings and institutions, who are pulling strings to keep people going in different directions. And those 2 things that precede living fully, that are right alongside them now, one is to keep the planet habitable. Because if we don't keep the planet habitable, the planet is going to transform into something else, and there won't be anything living in the sense that we talk about living on it. The step now is also not to destroy the species, because we have the capacity to destroy the human race and to damage everything else, but everything else will recover. Much of it, humanity won't be here. And guess what? It won't be the first time a species went extinct, except it won't be a meteor from without. It will be a nuclear weapon from within. This is why the challenge we have is that when we stand up for that, Martin Luther King, Shirley Graham Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, when we stand up for those kind of things, we have real enemies in the world who don't care about any of that, because their concept of reality, their idea of living fully, has been so narrowed by hatred, by fear. Brian Kemp, Troopers, has been so narrowed that they see their survival as somehow not connected to the rest of us, except, and here's the metaphor, here's the bridge, the Suez Canal comes in. It's all connected. The illusion is that it's not. And so when we think about what has happened over the last few days with the Evergreen, which is the name of the 220,000 ton boat, which is stuck at the south end of the Suez Canal, and as a result is costing the folk who own, the ownership class, that tiny group in the world, that transnational group in the world, costing them, roughly speaking, about $9.5 billion a day. And that's just the profit people, which has caused the United States government to make a statement in the last couple of days to say, at the behest of business owners, including the largest shipping company in the world, AP Moller-Maersk, that they will offer to help Egypt unstick the Suez Canal. Oh, wait, because these business people got on the phone. Why? Because guess what? 12%, over 1/10 of global trade that goes by sea, goes through that little strip. Which should blow everybody's mind, because it's all connected. So when you go, and I won't even get into all the other, in the last year, what we've seen interruptions. We saw a fire in Japan, when combined with what this fool Abbott and his criminal enterprise business friends have done over the decades in Texas when the weather hit might likely cause a shortage in superconductor parts, which means what? If your computer price goes up or your cell phone, what happened? Yeah, you thought it wasn't connected. That freeze in Texas, you didn't even hear about the fire in Japan. There are two papers I read every day, whatever else I read on a daily paper, and one's the New York Times, the other is the Financial Times. I don't read it because I like the perspectives. I read them because, I read the Financial Times because that's the paper of record coming out of England for the money people. They don't write that paper for me. I'm eavesdropping. And today's headlines of the Financial Times, the Suez Canal was the headline on the upper left-hand side of the print edition of the paper. Also, China flying their planes into Taiwan airspace, and now these money people are afraid that China getting ready to take Taiwan back. Also, in Europe, there is a third wave of COVID that is capsizing the second wave, threatening the total of the first wave, and they're saying they may get to 100,000 more people a day getting COVID, and because of this B117 strain. And of course, they did mention Ethiopia versus the Tigray and the massacres there, which is terrible. And it's very important to talk about all those things. But what I'm saying is that it's all connected. And while we're here talking about Grammys, while we're here talking about, who got what, and the world goes on, and then we go to the store and be like, hey, how come this toilet paper? Suez Canal, what they got to do? Okay. All connected. And I should mention this because we're going to clean up a little bit more on Haiti today, and we're going to go kind of more quickly. Understand that in terms of foreign policy, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in this country are pretty much indistinguishable. Their foreign policy is the same. That means that, on issues of trade, on issues of trade protection, on issues of foreign policy in terms of military intervention. I don't know if y'all see. Did you see the press conference with Joe Biden on?
I did.
What did you think of that? Just give me a sense of that, because I'm gonna tie that very quickly, and we'll use that to walk across to Haiti. But
so I looked at it through two eyes. First, as a journalist, yes. I feel like there was fatigue from Trump for 4 years of Trump. The media class has been so beaten to a pulp that they forgot how to be journalists. So why? Because it's like you got PTSD because you don't know this man gonna cuss you out. He gonna
about that
your mama. So now you have somebody that has a working brain for the most part, who has a little bit of a humanity, and they didn't ask him questions about COVID, about all of the things that we need, infrastructure, things we need answers to. They showed up and asked some
not one question about COVID. Wasn't that bizarre? That was bizarre to you, right?
Yeah, but I understand too, because I don't know what journalism is right now, and I don't think journalists know what journalism is. There's such a what Trump did to this country, but it's not Trump because it predated him.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, I think Obama got a free pass too. I think again, the chase for eyeballs, algorithms, clicks, people, for money, for advertising, has completely undermined the ability to be able to do the one job that you were charged to do, which is to hold power accountable, period.
My God.
Period. So that was kind of how I looked at it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's important as we think about, I agree with you. I mean, as a journalist, and it was very interesting, wasn't it, how, Yamiche Alcindor very early, raises the issues, and then, the issues that were raised, and then no fewer than 2 or 3 other going back to what Yamiche said. I'm wondering, are y'all, I mean, everybody now, everything is in a moment of reformation. And for you, now a seasoned award-winning journalist, to say, I don't know what journalism is right now. That's very striking. We should sit in that, even as we're having this conversation. Sit with that. Y'all write that down. I know a lot of people jot down notes and write that down, because there's a reason why the platform is named Narrative. We can't capture reality. In fact, Howard Thurman, the great theologian, and it was Howard Thurman, ironically, reading Howard Thurman, that sent me to a thing to tie this together today. I thought I had that Howard Thurman book, or it's a brand new book on Howard Thurman, and I could have sworn I brought it over here But at any rate, Howard Thurman used to talk about theology as or religion. Here it is. Yeah. Peter Eisenstadt, Against the Hounds of Hell.
Undefeated.
No, I'm saying, no, yeah, I just started reading. It just came out, actually. But Howard Thurman used to say, we human beings try to understand reality, but we can only understand a fraction of it. He says, what religion really is a human's attempt to grasp reality. And since you can't grasp it, we make up stories, and we take them little stories and use them as the handle to move our perception of reality around and around. That's what a narrative is. And it's interesting because Eisenstadt, who worked on the Howard Thurman papers, all the volumes that over there, really Dr. Walter Earl Fluker, very important brother who is the leader of that project, a Reverend PhD. His son now is over the archives at Atlanta University Center. Good young brother. But Eisenstadt is a historian, and it's interesting to read his perspective because he refers to Thurman as a anarcho mystic. In other words, he said he's not really a Christian. And Thurman, the book opens with them with Gandhi, which is where I'm going with this, because they ask Gandhi about nonviolence. Howard Thurman, Sue Bailey Thurman, his wife, is there. Another brother. They travel to meet Mahatma Gandhi, so they're there, and it's Howard Thurman and Sue Bailey Thurman who engage with Gandhi first, and Benjamin Elijah Mays and Howard Thurman. Eisenstadt actually wrote another book about that, co-authored a book about that. So when we talk about Martin Luther King and Gandhi, it's not Martin Luther King, it's Benny Mays and Howard Thurman, who were on faculty at Howard at one point. Then Benny Mays becomes the president of Morehouse, and Howard Thurman becomes the dean of the chapel at Morehouse. Martin Luther King encounters Gandhi through Black people. The African, in fact, there's a book called The African American Encounter with Gandhi. I probably didn't even have it in this room over here, but at any rate, that talks about that. I'm saying all that to say that in the course of an early morning conversation with Gandhi, the Thurmans asked him about nonviolence. And in fact, I think it was Sue Bailey Thurman who asked him, when you were in South Africa, bruh, how come you didn't engage the Blacks? How come you didn't get them into this struggle that you're now unfolding here in India? And he said, well, I didn't want to compromise their movement. Gandhi, I don't want to call him a liar because I ain't know him, but that wasn't completely true. I mean, Gandhi was also a nationalist. And I'm saying all that to say that when I look at Joe Biden's a nationalist. And part of the problem that we have in the world is that we look at these flags, we hear these anthems, we make up these imaginary things called nation states. And we think that somehow an imaginary line on the map or imaginary border that's policed with guns and violence is somehow going to stop something that's happening somewhere else from happening to us. The boat stuck in the Suez, the price is about to go up. COVID is like, well, that's a boundary. I didn't know that. And now everybody got it. We're all inoculated in the United States. Do y'all see that's just some lines on the map? Y'all didn't inoculate everybody on the continent of Africa where you tested half this stuff. You didn't. Europe is now going up. You're not watching that on loop on CNN. What you got to read somebody else's paper, the money people paper, to say, hey, this is because it's going to crater our economy. In Latin America, you've got COVID virus, and Cuba, which has developed its own virus, the only one in the hemisphere outside the United States that's developing something, or North America, we got doctors ready to go. But the United States, with these imaginary lines, we can't let these Cubans come here. Shout out to Obi Agbuna and all the folks who are saying, let the Cuban doctors come since y'all can't handle everything, apparently. But my point is this: the virus doesn't know any national boundaries. So when I watch that press conference, I'm listening to Joe Biden, not really talking about foreign policy, but Joe Biden is talking about foreign policy when he says, these bills they passing now make Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. Okay. And then when they ask him, you going to run again? Yeah, I intend on running again. So that's a yes. Okay. What is journalism? He said, can you hear? and then what do you expect Kamala Harris to run? Yeah, she's doing a great job. Is it? And then, well, what about the Republicans? And he said, well, I plan my life in increments. I move by, I move by faith in terms of like little bit at a time. I can't see the future. It reminded me of Howard Thurman. And then the lady was like, so that's a yes. So the Republicans, he said, I don't know if there's going to be a Republican Party. Do you? Oh, just in that moment, I'm hearing how now I can see how the Democrats are planning this. See what we're watching now with these desperate moves from the white nationalist party. And in fact, let me pause here just for a second before I get too far afield and talk about that to say this. Democrats versus Republicans is only a binary within the ecosystem of D versus R. When you step back and look at the function of political parties in this settler state, this capitalist state, and capitalism is global too. It's not local. That's why an American company can tell the U.S. government, hey, we got to go get this damn boat out because this money getting ready to get messed up. And so on TV, it looks like humanitarian, but really it's what they call transnational corporations, because corporations are transnational. When you see how Democrat and Republican political parties function in a capitalist state that's part of a world system, they are functioning as the government tools of whatever interests have the most influence over them. Now, in a country like the United States, where you just don't have a military to say, let's just dispatch with all the niceties. And then we're going to talk about Haiti in a second in that too. We ain't having no damn elections. This is going to be general after general after general after general. And these generals are going to be picked by the places overseas that have the financial interest in the factories in Haiti. And hey, shout out to Bill and Hillary Clinton, that factory y'all built, and that big hotel, luxury hotel in Pétionville with the Clinton Global Initiative, which, by the way, gets its wings underneath it in those last couple of years of Clinton's presidency as they come in the wake of deposing Aristide and then bringing him back and start dictating the terms. We know what y'all doing. It looked like humanitarian aid, but it's really neoliberalism. So at any rate, in countries where they're still voting, you can't just win an election by saying, look, I'm representing Coca-Cola and Home Depot. I'm representing, so vote for me and I'll get in. And I'm representing Lockheed Martin and the Carlyle Group, and I'm running against my opponent, who is Microsoft and Apple and Google. Wait, y'all funded all our campaigns? Okay, all right, pause. What I'm saying is your children should be able to have a better life than you did. And see, so you still got to give votes. So you can't just come out and say, which is why the HR1 is so terrifying to the white nationalist party, because HR1 is going to has a provision that triggers public funding for elections. So, this is an attempt to at least erode what Johnny John Roberts, my man, John Roberts. You can't get no whiter name than that. Well, maybe you can. John Walker, U.S. agent, the new Captain America, if you're watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But the point is white bread. Whiter bread than John Walker on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But that's that Citizens United case of 2010, where they say, you can have money is speech and you can have unlimited speech. So therefore you can have unlimited money. HR1 is trying to address that, in part, pull that back a little bit by saying, no, we should have public funding once you raise a certain amount of money. Now, why is that important? How does this all tie together? The Democrats and the Republicans are the same party as it relates to the interest of capital, the interest of international finance and corporations. This is why they both are always talking about the middle class. I mean, that's the fig leaf they use. But here's where they differ. And here's why we have to look at them as the same party, but look at them as the same party through a different lens than just localizing it to these imaginary borders we call the United States and thinking somehow that this is a binary between Democrats and Republicans. No, widen your lens and realize that this is the function of political parties in so-called democracies. In order to be in place to pass laws and rules and enforce laws and rules that allow those who are funding them to continue to do what they're doing globally, they've got to get local votes. And to get local votes, they have to cater to enough people in terms of messaging to get those people to vote for them. And here's where race comes in and white nationalism. The Democrat Republicans, same party, but let's look at the continuum. On the far side of the continuum toward transnational capitalism, you've got the interests represented by the white nationalist party, the Republican Party. I'll say white Republican, come back to white nationalism. The Republican Party is the party of business. And by not that the Democrats aren't, but they are the party of unvarnished business, laissez-faire capitalism. Go back to the Hoover administration, proceeds and comes after and comes in the wake of the Great Depression. Go back before that to the 1850s and 60s when they were founded, in part because there's a sectional conflict because the South, led by John C. Calhoun and them, who, by the way, the father of the filibuster, Mitch McConnell. But it's okay, because you about to have a front row seat to the end of your entire political life and your little settler project. So you don't go nowhere. Keep talking, bro. Keep talking. Now, those of you who are listening, y'all got a problem. But at any rate, John C. Calhoun and them in South Carolina, and then immediately in 1861, all those Confederate states, the same states, by the way, that have not expanded Medicaid expansion, even though the money was passed through the COVID relief bill, so that all those governors in Mississippi and Alabama, and all those governors in Florida, all those governors in South Carolina, all those governors in North Carolina, Governor of North Carolina is trapped by his legislature. All of you who don't have health care, who are not black and brown, all of you who are black and brown without health care, in terms of that enhancement of that Medicaid, you blame them. Those are the white nationalists, which brings me to the point. When the South is threatening to pull out because they got 4 million of our people in enslavement, they got a set labor class, and they're thinking about diversifying their economy, moving banking, moving it from New York and Boston and Providence, Rhode Island, and insurance, getting it down to Charleston, getting it down to New Orleans. And they're saying, we can diversify. Let's industrialize. Let's get some factories in there. Why? Because England is moving toward industrialization. And then we can just expand the Confederate States and move them. We can take over some Caribbean islands. We can go to, maybe we'll fight more of the Mexican War and take the rest of Mexico. We'll go down to Latin America and make some deals. The Union now is like, they're going to leave us. And so who is driving the don't let them leave argument? Business. But the business don't have a natural political party in the 1850s and 60s to advance their interests. So what do? They start in the 1850s, the Republican Party. The Republican Party is about business. The Republican Party is about laissez-faire. The Republican Party is about the naked economic capitalist interests that this country is founded in. Now, why is that important? At that point, the Democratic Party is winning elections, but the Democratic Party is teetering. Why is that important? It's important because by the time you get to 1860 and 61, now you got a real problem. You got a guy in office, Abraham Lincoln, Republican, this new party, he's representing them, but you got these Southerners getting ready to pull out. And they're like, hey, man, this is going to be terrible for business. Some of the citizens of New York City said, let's go to Albany and tell the governor of New York, if they leave, we got to leave with them. Why? Do you know how much money, how many raw materials and crops come through our port and from there and go to the world? We got to leave with them. So Lincoln, what you going to do, bro? You got to, But see, the problem is they get painted with the brush that if you fight the South over this is really a war with slavery. Because guess who else is in the Republican Party? And guess who is pestering the Republican Party? These abolitionists. Because you realize that slavery is at the heart of this sectional conflict, because slavery is the labor force, the free labor force in the South, even as the North got to pay its labor, which is a problem for the corporate owners and their new tool, the Republican Party. So they're like, yeah, and so we win this war, we could basically go down there and reconstruct the South and make all the money, because we can get our hands on the cotton, which is king, the global cotton market. We can go build railroads, and Cornelius Vanderbilt and all them cats, come into that. Yes, this is cool. So anyway, I don't get too far from me because I am left the Biden press conference. We'll come back to this in a second, and I'll walk back through the 80 and connect it all together to Brian Kemp in Georgia. So what you see is the Republican Party is pressing. They can't leave. But when they do leave, you got to bring them back. The Democratic Party is the home of those people who see themselves as the poor people, the working man, because ain't no women voting. The people that, it's Andrew Jackson populism. But that is also equated in this country. When you start talking about, working class people and working people and blue collar and all this stuff, eventually blue collar, later blue collar, that's white people. So the Democratic Party is the open white nationalist party. The Republican Party ain't pro-black. It's just that the Republican Party is going to need to stop the South from leaving. And then what emerges is the Civil War. The Republicans are in charge of the federal government. The Democrats see themselves as being set upon. And so I'll wind this up very quickly. In fact, let me put my timer on, because I know we're not going to go whole real long this time. So during the Civil War, what happens. Professor Hunter, what happens, right? There's a floating signifier. Let me not say it that way. There's a common element in this that we haven't articulated yet that is always present and always determines part of the outcome. That will be us. The floating signifier, I'll come back to in a minute. I want to use that phrase for that. And what happens? We find out they fighting. Oh shit, they fighting? Great. So we've been turning up rebellions since we got here. Now it's time to crank it up. And black people, Robert Smalls and his people in South Carolina, all them Negroes in the New Orleans, Louisiana Free Guard, them Negroes who's in Oklahoma, well, they've been marched over there, but mostly South Carolina, the 1st South Carolina Regiment, United States Colored Troops, also known as the Gospel Army. Them Negroes is like, oh, they fighting? Here's our chance. And as W.E.B. Du Bois says in Black Reconstruction in America, it is black people in the United States that turned the Union Army from an army to stop the Union from dissolving to an army of liberation. And they turned the war from a war to keep the Union together, to preserve the Union. Because some of the abolitionists like, let them go. William Lloyd Garrison, and let them go. The black people in the South especially turned the war from a war to keep the Union together to a war of liberation. In other words, we get involved. So, well, hell, we don't care why y'all fighting. This is our chance to get free. Fast forward to 2021. When that sister knocks on that door and them white boys put them chains on her, and amazingly, they are allowed to walk out of the Georgia State Capitol without fear. There's a million people outside waiting on their asses. When they put their hands on Park Cannon, and the best people can do is say, why are you arresting her? With phones in their face. Oh, Henry McNeil Turner is turning over in his grave. We'll come to McNeil Turner in a second. Understand that's a very different thing than what happened in the 1850s and 60s. Black people turned it up and liberated themselves. Why is that important? Because after that happens, the South resents it. The Democratic Party is the party of the South, the party of the people, the white people. The Republican Party is the party of business. They not only love it, now they're going to reconstruct the South. Here's the problem. They can't reconstruct the South with them white boys down there who just got their asses beat. They're going to need some new voters. 13th Amendment, abolishes slavery. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. 15th Amendment, right to vote to all men, black men included. What they're going to use those black men for? To vote. Where? In the South. Okay, and they divided the South up into 5 military districts after the Reconstruction. And they saying, y'all can't come back into the South. Come back into the Union formally until you create new state constitutions. You got to ratify these amendments, all this kind of thing. So they create these new state constitutions, and who's in the room? All these black men. So Robert Smalls, and then who gets elected to office? All these black men after they've written these new constitutions. State level, local level. Read Eric Foner's work, Freedom's Lawmakers, which is a compendium of all that stuff. Even to the United States Congress. Robert Smalls, the man known as the hero of the planter. That's a story we have to talk about another day. My man Andrew Billingsley, still alive in his mid-90s, wrote a great book on Robert Smalls. Andrew Billingsley from Alabama, my mama home state, representing Alabama. We talk about that in a second too. But Robert Smalls goes from the hero of the planter in the United States military, another 189,000 who fought in the Civil War, 10,000 of them black people were in the U.S. Navy, by the way. And that ain't even counting Harriet Ross Tubman, who directed troops in battle, Combahee River. Y'all check that out. Robert Smalls comes back to D.C. as a congressman. When the museums open back up, go down to the Smithsonian and see his statue. They got a statue of Robert Smalls in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. So they're writing those constitutions. What happens? Now we're going to get to Park Cannon. No, wait, pause. Before we get to Park Cannon, what happened in Georgia? Let me finish up on the press conference. The Democratic Party is the party of the lost cause. In other words, because their voter base is white people. And so they can't win elections with all these black people voting. And that's when you start seeing the violence, Professor Hunter. We're going to tie all these threads together. The violence like in 1873, the so-called Cruikshank case, United States versus Cruikshank, when black men and women have to go to the courthouse because the Republican sheriff says, I'm going to keep the ballot boxes here for safekeeping until we can count them, because these white boys have decided they're going to overthrow the election. And they come and these white boys surround the place and start shooting in there and throw some firebomb in there. And when the fire comes, black people running out, they massacring black people. And the thing makes it to the Supreme Court because they let them go with an all-white jury selection, all this kind of thing. And so they start dismantling Reconstruction almost immediately with violence. This is the violence. So what you see over the arc, and now I'm going to wind this up. I won't get into it. This is a whole history we should talk about. We should devote some time. Maybe go on the narrative side and really devote some real time on this. From the period of Reconstruction, from the late 1860s to now, what you've seen is that in order for one of the two parties, Democrats and or Republicans, to win elections, they've got to have enough votes to win elections. In order to get enough votes to have enough elections, they've got to be open to whatever constituencies that they need to put together. And whiteness as a floating signifier that can move between either party, which started in terms of the modern parties with the Democratic Party, found itself enough floating between the parties so that by the time you get to the so-called great migrations of the 20th century, when Black people start leaving these oppressive areas because the North and the Republicans, having gotten what they needed in terms of business, the railroads are in place, we done made a deal with these new bourgeois people down here in the South, we will now abandon the Negro. Oh man, my man Rayford Logan wrote a whole book about it called The Betrayal of the Negro, the nadir. I was just, look at that. There you go. The Betrayal of the Negro, from Rutherford B. Hayes to Woodrow with the great Dr. Rayford Logan. He coined a term called the nadir. This was Carr G. Woodson's friend on the faculty of Howard University for a number of years. At any rate, when they start abandoning Black people, now they trapped in these white primaries. They trapped with the Democratic Party. The courts are not honoring the laws. Plessy versus Ferguson, the civil rights cases. So guess what? They start leaving. And as they start their migration, you start seeing what? Now these Republican parties who love Black people, what do they say? In the South, white people don't mind being close to Black people as long as they don't get too high, meaning Black people don't rise too high. In the North, white people love Black people rising as high as they want, as long as they don't get too close. So look, these Black people start migrating, and now they're in these cities, New York, Chicago, places. Oh, we loved y'all when we was fighting for y'all when you was living in Mississippi, but you in Chicago now, hell no. And so then you start seeing stuff like the Lily White movement in the Republican Party, because Black people move north and say, we Republicans. Why? That's the party we fought with in, Civil War. So we Republicans here. Oh, hell no, you ain't no Republican here. So you see white nationalism really begin to take root in the early 20th century. And then you get Black people saying, oh, this is a trap. Let's just figure out what the hell we're going to do. And you see a shift in the 1950s, whereas the white nationalists, the Democrats in the South, are now the white nationalist party. Strom Thurmond and them, all them cats. They realized that this civil rights legislation from the federal level is going to pass because there's momentum for it. In 1957, they do something called the Southern Manifesto when the Civil Rights Act of 1957 is passed. And we'll talk another day about, of course, the Voting Rights Act of 65, 68, the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act of 64, which is a very important act we'll talk about again soon before we get finished today. As those politics begin to unfurl, and the Black people in the South who are not leaving confront the Democratic Party in the courts and in the streets. This is what we would call the civil rights movement, typically. What you see, which is made possible because Black people got guns. Now, we're going to talk about guns in a minute. There are three books I want to highlight, two of which we've talked about before. The great Charlie Cobb, my friend Charlie Cobb, How Guns Made the Civil Rights Movement Possible, that this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. Also, my very good friend, Baba AK, the man, Akanyeli Umoja down at Georgia State. We Will Shoot Back, Armed Resistance in the Mississippi Freedom Movement. And another book that I'm going to mention in passing, which is a very important book by Nicholas Johnson called Negroes and the Gun, The Black Tradition of Arms. This is an important book because he shows we always rock with the gun, baby. So the Not Effing Around Coalition in Georgia, I see what y'all doing. And in fact, we're going to the only book I'm going to quote from of those books is, the reason Nicholas Johnson called his book Negroes and the Gun is because he's a riff on this book, Robert Franklin Williams, Negroes with Guns. We're going to talk about Robert Franklin Williams in a minute. But at any rate, in the 1950s and 60s, as the civil rights movement jumps off, protected in many ways by Black women and men who got guns, and on the newsreels, Dr. King and them getting beat up and dogs biting them and all this kind of stuff, clearly this legislation is going to pass. The white nationalist party is in problem. If they don't, the white nationalist party host, the Democratic Party, got a problem. Because if they change these laws and let people start voting, if they let Black people start participating, they're not going to go into the Republican Party in the South because ain't nobody stopping them from registering to be Republican in the South because there's 5 Republicans in the South. And guess what? Interestingly enough, Condoleezza Rice from Birmingham, in her memoir, writes about the fact that her parents went down to register. They ain't gonna let them register as Democrats. Hell no, because that's who controls everything down here. So what does her father do? He registers as a Republican. That's how Congolese rights became Republican. You understand? So anyway, because it's tactical at that point. Now, I can't speak for her, but I certainly know what she said about her parents. So at any rate, as it's clear now they're winning the court victories. They beat up the white primary. Look at, the Albright case, Nixon, my man, who every time I go to Tuskegee, I go through and stop by his house just to see it. Gamillion, Dr. Gamillion, medical Dr. Gamillion versus Lightfoot, where they tried to gerrymander every black out of Tuskegee. Oh, y'all should see that design. How the hell can you put all the black people out of Tuskegee? How can you even draw something? There was so many sides in it. By the time we got to the Supreme Court, he said, we shouldn't even write no opinion. We should have a one sentence opinion. This some bullshit, overturned. I mean, you can't. So as the courts throw all that stuff out, and then of course the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is passed. The flood of blacks come into the Democratic Party. So what did the white nationalists do? Well, shit, we ain't gonna stay in no party with y'all. They move to the party of business. Mm-hmm. When I call the Republican Party the white nationalist party, I'm not saying that that's the political name of it. Its name is Republican. The floating signifier, the thing that can move from place to place, is white nationalism. It lived in the Democratic Party till the blacks got in, then it moved to the Republican Party. Now, why is that important to what we're talking about today? And what Joe Biden is talking about? Joe Biden persists, like those people Howard Thurman was talking about. Even though he was raised a Christian, he becomes, according to Peter Eisenstadt, and I like that term, an anarcho mystic, meaning what? Belief systems are belief systems. I ain't got to hold on to the old rugged cross no harder than I hold on to the star and crescent, no stronger than I hold on to what Gandhi talking about, or Buddhism, no stronger than I hold on to the Orisha or the Aboson if I'm in West Africa, or the Luas if I'm doing Vodun. I ain't got to hold on to none. I understand all of it as handles. Joe Biden got a handle too. His handle is called America. He done made up a country, and he's not alone. There are millions of others who've done it. Y'all imagine this as a nation. You got an anthem. You got some founding fathers. You got some mystical figures. George Washington is the father. Abraham Lincoln is the son. He gave his life. And y'all even trying to recruit Martin Luther King to be the Holy Ghost. Why? Because he going to stand there and say, I have a dream today. I have a dream that from Stone Mountain in Georgia. Oh, here we go, kids. We got a father. We got a son. We'll make a Negro the Holy Ghost, and we'll hold it all together with better than that. We're not, but there is no we, bruh. But Joe Biden is standing at the press conference with two things in mind. Here we go. It's a we. And in order to keep us together, the Democrats need to be in power. And in order to keep people together, that means the companies like the cat that called him and said, hey, bro, we got to go get this boat out of Suez Canal. Hop, chop, chop. Or his friends, the Clintons and stuff, who looking at their investments as well, including the ones that continue in Haiti. Shout out to the Clintons in Haiti. All that foreign policy, all that AFRICOM in Africa, all them Latin American governments like the one in Venezuela, where you propping up this fool Juan Guaido, who we clearly see is trying to foment a coup in Venezuela, set aside who Nicolas Maduro is or isn't. The United States foreign policy is the same when it comes to corporate interests. So in order to keep all that going, he got to win elections. And in order to win elections, all the people who are not white and the white people with some sense or try to think has this are now in your party. So in order to do the rest of the agenda you was put there to do, you got to win elections, and you got to win elections with that coalition that all came over here. Once them Republicans decided to win elections, they're going to stay with the white nationalist parties, but everybody can count. Everybody can count. And once you start counting, you realize now, unless the Republicans go back to what Rance Priebus and them was talking about when they lost that election to Barack Obama the second time. Unless they go back to that, they're in trouble. And you know what Priebus and them was saying? Look, it's like a taste test. If you put the values they say they running on side by side and take the labels off and bring all them Negroes who go to church 5 times a day and all them Puerto Ricans and Dominicans who are dyed in the wool Catholic, and you put same-sex marriage, and you put transgender and put all that in it, and then make them pick which one they go with, and then you put the label back on, you take out the blindfold. Oh shit, I'm a Republican, right? See, what Rance Priebus and them was trying to tell them, if you give up that white nationalism, you could pick off some of these people over here who are extremely what we would call conservative on social issues, because they ain't really following policy. They thinking this is all about abortion and guns. They really think that. And so, or if they don't think it, you can make them think it. But see, they ignored Rance Priebus in them. and they doubled down, tripled down. Now they got this TV bomb, this bankrupt TV bomb, Trump, and they have now put all their eggs in the basket of white nationalism. And Biden and everybody can count. So they're like, you ain't have no babies. You're going to piss off even some white people who was like, look, I'm a racist too, but damn, I do need to get my teeth fixed. So why can't you just expand Medicaid? So now, you know what I'm saying? So now, and now they looking and they saying, okay, we ain't got but one shot at this. We got to stop people from voting. Why? Because the Democrats' vote is based on all them other people. And now my vote is based on 15 people. Wait, how many? Oh, 14 people. Well, my base is 14 people. Wait, what? 12? Okay. Voter ID. Y'all can't pass out no water in line. It's a felony to look at a voting line. I mean, oh my God. Oh my God. Now, they so irrational at this point, they don't realize passing all them laws is going to throw out your little hillbilly friends. How many of them toothless white people in Georgia going to go out and get the right ID? Do you know how many of them going to pass out in line because they can't get no water? How many of them have you checked? How many of them vote absentee? They are so irrational at this point that they are passing laws that they haven't gamed out to realize, yeah, we're trying to get them black people and brown people. Yeah, you'll get a whole lot of white ones too. And guess what? Who's going to be the more motivated base? The more and more you just drop everything, put your Klan hood on, boy. You put your Klan hood on. And we're going to say, you know what? I don't even vote, but I went to register. Why? Because that motherfucker got to go. You, Brian Kemp, baby. Thank you. And so Joe Biden is sitting there. The lady asked him 3 times, is he running the 3rd time? He said, I don't even know if it's going to be a Republican Party. Do you? Because the Democrats are gaming that these cats may overplay their hand. And I know they got a blang on this blow-dried cosplay coal miner Joe Manchin, who's owned by the corporate interests in West Virginia, and Kristen Sinema, whatever the hell she's doing and not doing in Arizona to get HR1 passed. But this one here is for all the marbles. Why? Because like those black people in the Civil War who turned a conflict over money and labor into a liberation war, the X factor, the Democratic Party, is the black people who vote Democratic, not because they believe in Joe Biden. They don't give a damn about Joe Biden. They can see Joe Biden from who he is. Some of us who remember Joe Biden was the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm sorry, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and went easy on Clarence Thomas and let him slip through. Oh yeah, we remember. We know who you are, Joe. You yesterday's man, to use the quote of the book. But it ain't about D or R. This is about, we live in a 2-party system for now, and how do we best attack it to reconstruct it? Because our ultimate goal is to have better life, and get to better life. We got to be on the planet, which means we got to deal with this question of blowing each other up. We got a peace movement, and to get to even that, we got to make sure we don't destroy the ball. There's environmentalism. So in order to get people to vote for you, you claiming all this stuff. Oh yeah, minimum wage, we're going to raise that. I'm going to let that shit go as soon as I get in here. Don't worry about it. I'll give it away. All this other stuff. But guess what? While we voting for president and vice president, we're not that naive, because 2 by 2, who is this Mondesir Jones cat? I don't know, man, but I'm looking over here. Who is this Corey Bush coming in? I'm not sure, but we can take 2 or 3 of them. What's Ocasio-Cortez? What's this Sister Presley from it? Who is this Ilhan Omar? See, just like what happened with the radical Republicans, not just like, because it's black people now, and just like perhaps what happened in the South during Reconstruction, when Republican black people won election, you're now starting to see the Democratic Party become the home of more and more people. And as the demographics change, more and more people who are now thinking, I do really believe this stuff. And as I believe this stuff, I will be part of the coalition that makes it real. And that's where you start having a problem. See, because now the Democrats, it don't even have to be the Democratic Party once you get enough people. See, that's the thing we have to understand as well. But let me hasten this to a close. I want to bring this together with Haiti and with so Biden's press conference. He's letting you know, one, we'll get rid of the filibuster if we can. He told him that basically. He can't just say it. But yeah, if we have to it now, of course, that means they're going to have to drug Joe Manchin or something like that, because they're playing for all the marbles now. HR1 changes everything. Because, they've already filed the lawsuit. They've already filed the lawsuit in Georgia in federal court. So that's going to, but they've stacked the courts. The election don't matter. Yeah, the Democrats and Republicans are the same, but they're not the same for the way you're saying they're the same. They're the same because in order to win elections in a quote unquote democracy, you got to have numbers. In order to have numbers, you got to promise things. In order to promise things, you got to be in a position to be able to say you can fulfill some of those things. The Republicans have dropped all pretense because the votes they're drawing on are straight white nationalists, which has poisoned their minds so deeply that this is a crack that can be exploited using the Democratic Party potentially as a battering ram. This ain't about people being Democrats or Republicans. I'm neither one. I'm a black man in America thinking about how the hell do it free us. So in that process in Georgia, they've passed these draconian laws, and we saw what happened to Park Cannon. She's knocking on the door of this illegitimate governor who stole the election that Stacey Abrams won in Georgia. Kemp, these formless flesh jellyfish state troopers taking her out. And I thought to myself, I went back in that moment as black people like, what is she doing? White people like, what did she do? What did she do? That ain't the question. No, that's not the question. As Park Cannon was being arrested a couple of days ago, I went back to September the 3rd, 1868. Henry McNeil Turner, born in South Carolina. Henry McNeil Turner, working his way out of an enslavement environment into freedom. Henry McNeil Turner with the Civil War soldiers who turned that army into an army of liberation. Henry Turner runs for office. In July 1868, he's elected to the Georgia State Legislature, that same dome. 2 months later, the Georgia Democrats, who are the party of white supremacy, now the Republicans. At that time, the white nationalists are the majority of the legislature in Georgia. Even during Reconstruction, they expelled all the black members. And on September the 3rd, 1868, y'all go get Edwin Redkey's book, Respect Black, the speeches of Henry McNeil Turner, or my friend Andre Johnson, who has done the voluminous works on Henry McNeil Turner, my former student now, brilliant historian in his own right, James Morgan, who's done work. They got a website on Henry McNeil Turner. Go look up Henry Turner. Henry Turner's friend, Martin Luther King's grandfather, A.D. Nixon. No, not A.D. Nixon. A.D. Nixon was in Montgomery. Alfred Daniel Williams, A.D. Williams, his mother's father, friends with the great Henry Turner. No, Willis Williams. No, it was AD, the Georgia Equal Rights League. They helped found that. These are the fearless black politicians and black community in Georgia in the 1860s. And so as I thought about what was happening as Park Cannon got her hands put on, and these troopers didn't fear for their life in that moment, as they might fear if Robert Williams has been there. I'm gonna go to Robert Williams in a second. They haven't forgotten Haiti. We're gonna get it all in. We're going about an hour. So we've been going about an hour. So it made me think about the speech Henry McNeil Turner gave in that same Georgia legislature, September 3rd, 1868. Y'all can read it. Let me just do this. I'm gonna read y'all a little bit of what Henry McNeil Turner told them once they told him, oh no, nigga, you and the rest of these black people that got elected, we voting to put you out. Wait, I can't have my seat? No, this ain't Julian Bond now when they did the same thing to him. Where we had a whole thing. Y'all go to narrative and get the annotated version of our long discussion about Julian Bond. We talked about him same around town. C.T. Vivian made transition. By the way, C.T. Vivian's memoir just came out posthumously. C.T. Vivian. It's in the action, baby. Memories of a nonviolent warrior. My God, the great C.T. Vivian. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But at any rate, Henry Turner, this is what he said. Oh, I can't have my seat. Let's go to the speech. Mr. Speaker. I love how he's, you know how they do, my colleague. Mr. Speaker, before proceeding to argue this question upon its intrinsic merits, I wish the members of this house to understand the position that I take. I hold that I'm a member of this body. Therefore, sir, I shall neither fawn nor cringe before any party, nor stoop to beg them for my rights. Some of my colored fellow members in the course of their remarks took occasion to appeal to the sympathies of members on the opposite side. I hear you, Joe Biden. I hear you, Kamala Harris. I understand. We're better than that. And he says, Turner says, and to eulogize their character for magnanimity. They're going to defend their own character. Henry Turner says, it reminds me It reminds me very much, sir, of slaves begging under the lash. This ain't 2000 with a whole lot of black people around. This Negro in the Georgia legislature in 1868 with about 4 or 5 other black people, and the whole place surrounded with with Kemp's white nationalist forefathers. He talking like this in 1868. He says, I am here to demand my rights and to hurl thunderbolts at the men who would dare cross the threshold of my manhood. There's an old aphorism which says, fight the devil with fire. And if I should observe the rule in this instance, I wish gentlemen to understand that it is but fighting them with their own weapon. So he could call them devils today. He's in here by himself. These other Negroes then disarmed. Oh, please, I'm a good person. I'm not begging. That's like slaves. He said the scene presented in this house today is one unparalleled in the history of the world. From this day back to the day when God breathed the breath of life into Adam, no analogy for it can be found. Never in the history of the world has a man been arraigned before a body clothed with legislative, judicial, or executive function, charged with the offense of being a darker hue than his fellow men. I know that questions have been before the courts of this country and of other countries involving topics not altogether dissimilar to that which is being discussed here today. But sir, never in the history of the great nations of this world before has a man been arraigned, charged with an offense committed by the God of heaven himself. Cases may be found where men have been deprived of their rights for crimes and misdemeanors, but it has remained for the state of Georgia in the very heart of the 19th century to call a man before the bar and there charge him with an act for which he is no more responsible than for the head which he carries upon his shoulders. Brian Kemp, you corn-pone clown. Stacy's coming. You're done because you just cut the head off 8 hillbillies in Forsyth, another 20% of it, trying to get at her, people who look like her, trying to convict her of the crime of being born black. Turner says the Anglo-Saxon race, sir, is a most surprising one. No man has ever been more deceived in that race than I have been for the last 3 weeks. I was not aware that there was in the character of that race so much cowardice and so much pusillanimity. The treachery which has been exhibited in it by gentlemen belonging to that race has shaken my confidence in it more than anything that has come under my observation from the day of my birth. What is the question at issue? Turner says, why, sir, this assembly today is discussing and deliberating on a judgment. Oh, I love this next line. Turner says, and cherub means angel. He said, as we know, but there may be a couple people who didn't. Turner says, there is not a cherub that sits around God's eternal throne today that would not tremble, even if were such an order issued by the supreme God himself to come down here and sit in judgment on my manhood. If God told the angels to come down here and pass judgment on my manhood, they wouldn't move. They'd be like, I'm not going there messing with him remedial term. And you crackers think, oh, he calls them buckra. That's the word they would use. Gentlemen may look at this question in whatever light they choose, and with just as much indifference as they may think proper to assume. But I tell you, sir, that this is a question which will not die today. This event shall be remembered by posterity for ages yet to come, and while the sun shall continue to climb the hills of heaven. He goes on, Henry Neal Turner, to talk about, in fact, I just got to read one more line. I'm keeping, because this thing, I love, y'all go look up Henry Turner. Let me see. Where can I find this? No slaves begging under this lash. I had to pull up a version here because I was looking for my, oh, here we go. He says, go on with your oppressions. Babylon fell. Where is Greece? Where is Nineveh? And where is Rome, the mistress empire of the world? Why is it that she stands today in broken fragments throughout Europe? Because oppression killed her. Every act that we commit is like a bounding ball. If you curse a man, that curse rebounds upon you. And when you bless a man, the blessing returns to you. And when you oppress a man, the oppression also will rebound. Where have you ever heard of 4 millions of freemen being governed by laws and yet have no hand in their making? Search the records of the world and you will find no example. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. How dare you to make laws by which to try me and my wife and children and deny me a voice in the making of the laws? I know you can establish a monarchy, an autocracy, an oligarchy, or any other kind of ocracy that you please, and that you can declare whom you please to be sovereign. But tell me, sir, how can you clothe me with more power than another where all sovereigns are alike? How can you say you have a republican form of government when you make such a distinction and enact such prescriptive laws? Turner goes on to say, whatever y'all doing, this devilment, it's not going to stand because we're not going to disappear by virtue of a rule. Let me pause. Now we switch. Coming back through Biden. Biden's press conference, as I'm listening to it with the ears of somebody who knows enough American history and enough black movements in America to understand that this is a watershed moment. And that if they can get HR1 passed, then you're going to see a couple of things, I think. You're going to see a straight political war one with precedent in the decade leading up to the Civil War, which is why I did pull this book as we're talking about people shooting up Atlanta, people shooting up Colorado, a brother getting stopped because he had all these weapons going into a store in Atlanta the other day. This is a book called The Field of Blood, Violence in Congress and the Road to Civil War. Joanne Freeman writes a book that says, she shows that today's hyperpolarized environment cannot compare with the turbulent atmosphere of the decades before the Civil War, when the U.S. Congress itself was rife with conflict. Legislative sessions were routinely punctuated by mortal threats, canings. Y'all know about the canings. What's my man name? Thaddeus Stevens. Flip desks, and all-out slugfest. Right? Congressmen drew pistols and waved Bowie knives at rivals. One representative even killed another in a duel. Many were bullied in an attempt to intimidate them into compliance or silence, particularly on the issue of slavery. Now, when Biden is talking, he's well aware of the climate in this country. He sees the violence. Oh, we're not going to pass gun control legislation. Hey, Joe, we just need a vote. I'm not for gun control. My corporate master who I serve is really, I got to stay in this office. And to get there, I got to get these coal miners by telling them their jobs coming back. I know it's a lie, but I got to keep this office. Do you understand how much money I get from these people? So I got to do, I'm not for, you know what? You ain't got to be for gun control voucher. I better go reread Henry Manil Turner. You can keep effing around, but here's what's going to happen. You're emboldening those people who keep shooting stuff up. And you think we just going to sit back and get shot? Oh, sir, let me remind you, Biden is aware of all that. So what he's saying is, if it come down to it, I'm going to have to go see, I got to talk to the people who own Joe Manchin. It ain't going to be no political campaign, although that pressure is important. I got to talk to the owners now. Get your mans in line. And if we have to blow up the filibuster, we will, if we can get to that point. But if we don't want to get to that point, and then, you're going to run again? I don't know if it's going to be a Republican Party in 4 years. Do you? They are banking on the fact this thing is going to fracture in a way that they can't put it back together. And I'm not so certain politically that they are wrong, because the laws that they are passing in these states for voter suppression, they're all going to be challenged in court. And if and when they get to court and the court upholds them, there's something in the law called judicial supremacy, meaning that what the courts rule is indeed the law. And then there are cases in the history of American jurisprudence where the court ruled one thing and the people just decided, we don't care. The courts are going to lose legitimacy if they uphold all this stuff. And we stack the Supreme Court. Okay, there's about to be a crisis different than the Civil War, but similar. History does not repeat itself, but history rhymes. In other words, so we've been here in this settler state before. And meanwhile, the Black people, other oppressed people in this country are not just going to sit and watch it like a TV show. We will act. The question is, will we act in large enough numbers with enough coordination to be able to act in concert to do the things that will advance our interests, not only as Black people, not only as Black and brown people, but human beings? Will we be able to get together? And that's why you see at this moment, while we're here on Saturdays, while Tamika Mallory's at the Grammys, where people are on Facebook and they're organizing, people are trying to find platforms to get people to think and to organize and to get together more and more and more to punch through the static, because we are not just like that tanker in the Suez. We are floating slowly into a crisis. And once this thing happens, all the king's horses and all the king's men not going to be able to put it back together. And I'm talking in this case about the earth, also about the nation states. Now, what we saw with Park Cannon in Georgia and her being arrested, nobody interfering. I said Henry Manil Turner would be turning his grave, because at least he would have been like, you buckra, get your hands out. He might even slugged them. And I'm saying, you thank God you had the people. You think whatever God you believe in, that you didn't have somebody in there that said something to you, and then you turn around and try to arrest her or him. Because it had been me, I probably wouldn't be here on Saturday. I say that, I don't know in the moment, but I'm just saying, I'm looking at her like all of us and thinking, man, if that cracker had turned around and looked at me and took a step, I'd have erased all of his dental work. You know what I'm saying? Now, they may have shot and killed me in that moment, but he ain't never got to worry about arresting nobody else. I'm saying, because that's the kind of anger and fury it elicits. And when I see those young brothers and sisters in the Not Effing Around Coalition who are strapped down there, march to Stone Mountain, and people say, oh, they shouldn't do that. The Second Amendment either applies to everybody or it doesn't. And if you start selectively applying it, When you disarm this cat who came in the store with all them guns, okay, maybe that's good. But you didn't stop this white boy on buying guns on the way to kill all those Korean sisters and these other Asians over here. And you didn't stop that other white boy who went in there and shot up Colorado. Y'all don't stop none of them. And somehow they all live. They get arrested. How the hell is this boy still alive? How the hell is this one still alive? Y'all kill all the black people for being alive. You killed Breonna Taylor in her bed. But guess what? Now, let's go to one of the 4 I mentioned. Not We Will Shoot Back, where my man Akinyele tells the stories in Mississippi during the civil rights movement of how Medgar Evers was strapped, how a lot of times you see those marches, what you don't see is brothers and sisters in the bushes with guns saying, if the Klan take a shot today, that's when we're going to see the other thing. And you're going to turn the camera off because this ain't no non-violent. It's a non-violent march, but we got all the heavy artillery in the bushes on the other side. The Klan over there, we over here. Or Charlie Cobb, who was in SNCC. And if you hear him and his comrade, Stokely Carmichael, the great Kwame Ture, and the rest of them talking about how, you know, many of them were armed in those cars as they're driving back and forth, because you see what happened to Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney. You see what happened now. Non-violence ain't nothing. No, I'm in the middle of the night. Self-defense, armed self-defense. I'm not going to get into Negroes and the gun, what gives you the history of black people and gun ownership, which is very important. But I will linger for a minute on my man, Robert Williams. Robert and Mabel Williams. Never got a chance to meet Robert Williams, but I did get a chance to meet Mabel Williams. A very nice lady. You look at her and think, oh, this is a sweet old lady. It's somebody's grandmama. Yeah, y'all better not mess around with Mabel Williams. Trust. Y'all go look up Robert and Mabel Williams. In fact, look at our website called the Freedom Archives. In fact, join Narrative. So when you come on the other side, see, we do that heavy lifting for y'all. By the time this gets up and we have it annotated, you can just click the links, the hyperlinks, among other things. And then we have a conversation about it. This Robert Williams was he was the former president of the Union County branch of the NAACP in Monroe, North Carolina. A veteran. He went to West Virginia State College for Negroes and Johnson C. Smith. Shout out Charlotte, Johnson C. Smith. Very interesting brother. He was declared a fugitive from trumped up kidnap charges after a racial disturbance in Monroe in 1961. Why? He was demonstrating for civil rights, and eventually he and his wife, they went to Cuba. They had to get the hell out of the country. They had him on the FBI's most wanted list. In fact, they started printing a newsletter called The Crusader. There's the cover from 1962, April. They're publishing it in Cuba. There's the cartoon. Here's Cuba. Here's Castro. Stop. Stop. No racists allowed here. Well, y'all can't come to Cuba and get the Williams. They have fled. Timothy Tyson wrote a book called Radio Free Dixie on Robert and May, and because they had a broadcast called Radio Free Dixie. They broadcasting from Cuba. They in Algeria. They go meet with Mao in China. Williams eventually turns himself in, comes back to the United States to go on trial. He's an international fugitive. Robert Williams died of old age and disease at his house. I remember reading his obituary. I was on the way to going to class, and I read his obituary riding the bus in West Philly. I'm like, oh, man, Robert Williams, Ashe. Robert Williams said, I'm a revolutionary like George Washington, and I want to die like George Washington. Not on the battlefield. I want to die on my porch at my house, just like George Washington. Why y'all think all the revolutionaries got to die in a damn fight? You fight so you don't have to die in a fight. And so Negroes with Guns tells the story of how when the Monroe, Louisiana cats said they were going to get guns and arm and form rifle clubs, and yeah, NRA shit, we black, we can join too. Sounding like Ida B. Wells. By the way, here's his wanted poster. Interstate flight, kidnapping. They put him up on a trumped up charge of kidnapping. There's a whole story behind that. But at any rate, I want to get to this point with guns. And this is in thinking about Park Cannon and Brian Punk Kemp and his little punk stormtroopers down there in the Georgia State Capitol, in the spirit of Henry Benil Turner, who was like, God wouldn't send an angel down here to pass judgment on my man. Hey, you think I'm gonna let you buckra pass judgment on my manhood? They started picketing because there was a local pool that had been, I want to say, oh wait, let me show you this one too. This him and his wife, Miss Mabel, when they were younger. I met her, of course, as a much older lady, and just as sweet as pie. Smile, beautiful smile. And I'm thinking, you're the same one in that famous picture, you and your husband with them damn Lugers. And she just laughed. But at any rate, there was they had accused in North Carolina these two little black boys of rape. One was like 9 years old because they called it the kissing case because they had been with these white girls and they accused them of kissing the white girls, and that means rape. Like Scottsboro, 1932-33, you know, Rosa Raymond Parks raised money for Scottsboro case, this kind of thing. But so the NAACP is picketing and they're protesting because it's a whites only pool, but the money is municipal. It was raised by everybody. So they're at the protest, right? Watch this. The picket line continues. This is Robert Williams. On Sunday, on our way to the swimming pool, we had to pass through the same intersection, US 74 and US 601. Those of you Southerners know some lonely stretches in the South, these interstates. There were about 2,000 or 3,000 people lined along the highway. 2 or 3 policemen were standing at the intersection directing traffic, and there were 2 policemen who had been following us from my home because they're already on the list. I want y'all to think about this now when you start talking about activists and who's not an activist and who's willing to put their life on the line. As soon as it says an old stock car without windows was parked by a restaurant at the intersection. As soon as we drew near, this car started backing out as fast as possible. The driver hoped to hit us in the side and flip us over. But I turned my wheel sharply and the junk car struck the front of my car and both cars went into the ditch. Then the crowd started screaming. Trigger warning, I'm about to use the N-word because it's what he wrote here. Then the crowd started screaming. They said that a nigger had hit a white man. They were referring to me. They were screaming, kill the niggers, kill the niggers, pour gasoline on the niggers, burn the niggers. We were still sitting in the car. The man who was driving the stock car got out of the car with a baseball bat and started walking toward us, and he was saying, nigger, what'd you hit me for? I didn't say anything to him. We just sat there looking at him. He came up close to our car within an arm's length with the baseball bat, but I still hadn't said anything, and we still didn't move in the car. What they didn't know was that we were armed. Under North Carolina state law, it is legal to carry firearms in your automobile as long as there are firearms that are not concealed. No firearms are concealed. Second Amendment. I had 2 pistols and a rifle in the car. When this fellow started to draw back his baseball bat, I put an Army 45 up in the window of the car and pointed it right into his face. And I didn't say a word. He looked at the pistol and he didn't say anything. He started backing away from the car. Somebody in the crowd fired a pistol. And the people again started to scream hysterically, kill the niggers, pour gasoline on the niggers. The mob started to throw stones on top of my car. So I opened up the door of the car and I put one foot on the ground and stood up in the door holding an Italian carbine. At this time, all this time, 3 policemen had been standing about 50 feet away from us while we kept waiting in the car. Well, while we kept waiting in the car for them to come and rescue us. Mind you now, he know they racist too. Then when y'all coming over here and stop this, you see these illegal people over here? When they saw that we were armed and the mob couldn't take us, 2 of the policemen started running. One ran straight to me and he grabbed me on the shoulder and said, surrender your weapon, surrender your weapon. I struck him in the face and knocked him back away from the car and put my carbine in his face. And I told him we were not going to surrender to a mob. I told him that we didn't intend to be lynched. The other policeman who had run around the side of the car, here we go. You know, I watch Chicago PD and all that old bullshit. The other policeman who had run around the side of the car started to draw his revolver out of the holster. He was hoping to shoot me in the back. They didn't know that we had more than one gun. One of the students, who was 17 years old, finally put a 45 in the policeman's face and told him that if he pulled out his pistol, he would kill him. The policeman started putting his gun back into the holster and backing away from the car, and he fell into the ditch. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the punchline. Me and Nick Cannon read this book together a couple years ago. It's hilarious. This was his favorite part. Here it is. There was a very old man, an old white man out in the crowd, and he started screaming and crying like a baby. And he kept crying. And he said, God damn, what is this goddamn country coming to that the niggers have got guns? The niggers are armed and the police can't even arrest them. He kept crying and somebody led him away through the crowd. Let me tell y'all something. Brian Kemp, bruh, son of Herman Talmadge and Ernest Talmadge, the father and son racist governors of Georgia that preceded you. Let me tell you something, Brian, as your dying demographic tries to shore up its electoral majorities by stopping the rest of the people to vote. Don't you understand that voting is the best option for you if our common humanity is the thing that we should all be trying to preserve? That white nationalism is going to not only rob your people of their health care, not only rob your people of the ability to maybe use the Democratic Party as the point of entry for a battering ram against global finance capital. Don't you understand? I know you understand. Of course you understand, but you can't win no more elections, and you got to be the one in power because your corporates have told you. But don't you understand that every time you make it harder for somebody to vote, one of these young cats right here, especially somebody who may go back and find a copy of Negroes and Guns, realizes, I ain't scared of you, bro. Now, if you pull your gun out, Troop, because you're arresting his sister, and I want to know why. If you pull it out, you see this here? I'm gonna blow your brains out, big boy. Except I'm not going for the chest center mass. Your face ain't got no bulletproof armor on it. And I'm saying, people say that would be crazy. Y'all better go read some history. That's what kept many of the civil rights workers alive. Kwame Ture said they would have all been killed if the Negroes wasn't strapped. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about the civil rights workers, although some of them were. I'm not talking about Dr. King, for whom nonviolence was a way of life, except in self-defense. Go read what Martin Luther King said. I'm not even talking about the Thurmans who asked Gandhi about self-defense, and Gandhi understood violence for self-defense. I'm talking about regular ass black people who are not politicized, who are trying to just get through the day with their families, who y'all gonna pick the right one. And what you did last week with Park Cannon, you're getting a little closer to something you can't control because y'all ain't got muscle like that. Because a great deal of your military are the family of those people. And if you think they just gonna stand up and salute some imaginary thing called a nation, then you have misread world history. And so let me now tie that together with where we stopped in Haiti, because we're not gonna spend a lot of time on Haiti. We talked about Haiti for 2 weeks. And if y'all want to really get into Haiti, you understand that Haiti is, and we talked about that, I showed you all the books, and y'all can go back and look, well, all the books. I'll show you some good point of entry books. There are many more than that. But the Haitian history, as we know, we talked about last week, really can be divided into several sections very quickly. You got the pre-1791 section where the Africans or the Europeans have come and dispossessed the land of the Native Americans. They bring all these Africans in. By the time you get to 1791, you got almost 500,000 Africans there. If you read, of course, we talked about the Black Jacobins and so many other books on Haiti. But ultimately, after 1791, when they have the Haitian Revolution, you see the rebellion from 1791 to 1803. We talked about that a lot. 1804. They declared themselves independent New Year's Day. And then from 1804 to 1825, you have basically the echo of Toussaint, because Toussaint is dead. They kidnapped him, they took him to France, they killed him. Dessalines comes after. In fact, when I was at the Haitian embassy back in 2017 for the 214th anniversary of the Battle of Vertières, they battled the Indonesian Revolution. I saw this book on the coffee table. This is the visitor's book, the Livre d'Or, 1804 to 2004, Bicentennial of the Republic of Haiti, right? Now, this ain't the book I saw, but I was like, I need that book. So I'm talking to these cats. They had a library, right? So anytime I go in a library, a private library, public library, I'm looking for the books I don't have. If it's black books, I can usually spot the books I don't have, because most of them I do have. I ain't seen that book. And book people will tell you can tell a book a lot of times by the color. That's how Schomburg had his library designed. We had to talk about that another day. Him and Jean Blackwell Houston, she used to tell a story about that. So Ernestine Rose, all them. Anyway, so I was looking at this, I said, damn, this is a pretty book. We're in the embassy, which is part of the contradiction and part of the challenge for Africans who don't live in Haiti, who always looking for heroes. Black Americans always looking for heroes. Robert Mugabe, hero. Kwame Nkrumah, hero. Nelson Mandela, hero. Winnie Mandela, hero. Okay, no question. Also complicated. Also compromised in some ways. Also human, in other words, like other people. So we're looking for Maurice Bishop, hero. He's kind of uncompromising. I mean, Walter Rodney, hero. I mean, we're looking for heroes. Nanny the Maroons, hero. Anyway, Haiti, we want it as a narrative of heroes. So does the government. But so we show up at the embassy. We're not thinking about Michel Martelly, who was the United States man who Hillary Clinton went down there during Obama's administration and said, I know he didn't get enough votes to be in the runoff. I know maybe less than 15% of the Haitian people participated, and he didn't even get that. Remember, that's when Wyclef Jean said he gonna run for president of Haiti. It's all kind of mess. They put Martelly in the runoff and then put him in as the president. The guy down there now, Jovenel Moise, that's Martelly's man, which means he's the United States man, which means he's international finance man. They call him the banana man. That's a whole nother story. Well, it's not really a whole nother story. I'm saying, but at the same time, that Sweet Mickey, because he was an entertainer. You know, Trump ain't the first head of state anywhere to be an entertainer and then move into politics. Sweet Mickey was one. Hell, Martelly came to Howard University campus in like 2014 or 15 and came over to School of Business to talk about development. And the students like, you going? I said, I can't go over there and watch Sweet Mickey. I can't. I mean, because, you know, we're already complicit because in the diaspora, everybody's a hero. To us, that dude ain't no hero. And Haiti is a heroic place, which is why I was honored to go to the embassy to give a few remarks on the Battle of Vertières. I mean, I'm like, my God, this is an honor. The Haitians, are you kidding? I saw Septima Clark's picture on the wall, Jean-Baptiste Dusable, Auto. And so I'm looking at this book like, I want this book. Because I'm looking through it. So it took me a couple of years. I tracked that. I only made 1,000 of these. This is copy 951. That's a story from another day. Anyway, they got all the artwork. Here's where Dessalines is taking the white out of the middle of the Haitian flag. The dude on the other side, Alexander Pétion, ends up after Toussaint is killed. Dessalines takes over, and then they split. Dessalines decides, I don't know about this prime minister, first council. I'm gonna be the king. And Pétion is like, nah, bruh. So they split. Pétion takes the south of Haiti, and Dessalines takes the north. I'm looking at the pictures like, damn, how far back does this go? It goes back to the origins. It's got the Bois Cayman. Remember we talked about that last week? It's got the Bois Cayman ceremony. Haitian art, by the way, and I got a whole bunch of books on Haitian art. We can't really talk about it. I'm going to take about 2 more minutes. I just want to show y'all some of these pictures, which is why I had to get this book, right? Here go the sister, the maroon sister with the machete in her hand, with the chain being broken. They serious about this heroic narrative. I'm thinking about this. How the hell does this compare to American history? All you black people, I know. Look, I lived in Philly for 17 years. I've been in Bessie Ross' house more time than probably most of the tourists ever go to Philadelphia. Damn Bessie Ross. Damn Bessie Ross. Why? Because here's Catherine Flon, who is seen as the mother of the Haitian flag. Because after Toussaint ripped the white, after Dessalines ripped the white out, she sold the Haitian flag. I mean, how you gonna be mad? Y'all want Bessie Ross, y'all want her. You see what I'm saying? I'm saying they don't be bullshitting with their narrative. I mean, it's a beautiful narrative, even as they got this criminal enterprise going on. And then they show all the presidents, all the people who've been in Haiti. And then the last page, almost the last page, they got the 4 that led up to 2004, including that brother right here, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, which is where we're going as I wind to a close on this in Haiti. Aristide was the first democratically elected president of Haiti. Let's get to him. Remember I said the first phase is pre-1791. The second phase is the revolution, 1791 to 1804. Third phase is after 1804. After Dessalines and Pétion split, then Dessalines dies, then Boyer, President Boyer comes in and reunifies Haiti. He's able to hold it together to around 1825. A few years before, France says, y'all got to pay us for winning this war. And that's the debt that crippled Haiti. Because remember, in terms of nation states, the politics may be local, but the money is global. Suez, mess up, get on the phone, get your governments in place. Haiti has been a perpetual victim. They have either been under occupation or global fighting against them since the revolution. So with 1825, when Boyer is gone as president, from 1825 to 1915, this is the period Gardis was talking about. Go back and watch last week. That's the period where you have these generals, nobody's elected. You've got a guy named Faustin Soulouque who says, I'm going to be the emperor. This is the second empire. The first one was Emperor Henri Christophe. I'm going to be the second emperor. Why? Because they're trying to figure out forms of government. They're trying to trade. They're trying to build their economy. But as I said last week, those Haitian Maroons, the people in the countryside who want to live better life, are saying none of y'all are serving us. So there's this perpetual unrest, but they can't work it out on the island because they're constantly being interfered with outside, especially the United States, who doesn't recognize Haiti until 1862, in part because Lincoln and them wants to send us there because he wants us out of the country. I know y'all love Lincoln, but it's okay. Y'all can back up off him. And so Gard has talked about that period. And then you get into 1915, the United States Marines go in there under Woodrow Wilson and occupy the country. And in many ways, Haiti been occupied since 1915. Either directly or indirectly. 1915 to 1934, you get the first direct U.S. military occupation. And they set up the Haitian military. And it has been the Haitian military that they've used as the thugs on the ground to keep Haiti destabilized. And with those little cracks in between, every time it looked like Haiti's getting ready to break some free air, and those Africans who did what we just saw them pictures of, their descendants try to work it out, here come all these damn international corporations, finance, capital, foundations. Shout out again to the Bill Clinton Global Initiative. And all these other people who come in and say, oh, hell no. Because we need the baseballs out of Haiti, like the Dominican Republic. We need the cotton out of Haiti. We need all these other. We done built the factory over here. No, hell no. And which government is going to allow us unrestricted gangster capitalist access? We don't give a damn about you farmers and the rest of them. So anyway, let's continue very quickly. This won't take much longer. So what you see is from 1934 to 1957, after the United States leaves, they got a thug in the Dominican Republic named Trujillo, who they own. Read Gerald Horne's book, Hot War in the Cold Zone. You could talk about all this stuff. I mean, we talk about this much more deeply. Those of you know, they slaughtering Haitians in the DR. That beef between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, these are from people whose ancestors had tried to unify the entire island because of these imperialists. But everything is there, from colorism, xenophobia. How y'all be xenophobic? Y'all the same damn people. Got out the same boat, but some people speak Spanish and some speak French. It's a difficult thing. So at any rate, you see these presidencies, Vincent Lescott, who was there before 1957. The reason I know him, in fact, is because I saw a picture of him in Howard University Museum. He came to Howard. He's standing there with Nelson Rockefeller talking to the president of Howard University. I'm like, this ain't nothing but finance damn capital, because Haiti ain't never had no elected president up until Aristide, which is where we're getting to now. 1957, oh my God. I'm going to talk about it. If I can find it, I'll show it to you if I can. In 1957, there's a dude that comes to power. They got a whole section on Vaudon in here too. Oh yeah, here we go. There's a dude that comes to power who is beloved by some people in the countryside because he brings them health care when they can't get it. Just a damn picture of his doctor's bag and his hat. That's what he was known by. Mm-hmm. He was known as Papa Doc. Papa Doc Duvalier. There he is with his wife. And then 1957, he's appointed president of Haiti. Here he is with the only muscle that counts in Haiti, the army. Mm. He embraces, you know, the authentic Haitian culture. You know, he's very proud of the culture, but he, like a couple of these cats before, embraces Vaudon. He's talking about it, and he cultivates a group of people as his kind of inside armed security who go out terrorizing people called the Tutomokut. The Tutomokut. These people, you know, now, I mean, Haitians, man, Haitians are as black as anybody in the world. As Dr. John Henry Clark used to say, whatever religion black people believe in, they believe in that. John Clark said, black people will out-pope the Pope and out-Muhammad. So whatever we believe. So Vaudon, when this cat embraces, and of course, remember that's when we talked about Jean-Priest Mars and all these, I mean, authenticity, you know, he's trying to get this thing together. So here he is with his son, Baby Doc. You see? So I got to get this book. It's just a nice book to have resources. But at any rate, very quickly, between 1957, then eventually the man declares himself president for life. He dies in 1971. He turns it over to his son from 1971 to 1986, Baby Doc the president, the dictator. And then once Baby Doc is run out, because guess what? This is one thing I love about the Haitians. Y'all saw that sister with the cutlass, right? See, black people not like Americans. I'm sorry, black Haitians not like Americans. They can steal an election for y'all. They can steal in broad daylight a governor's election in Georgia, and Brian Kemp can sleep at night. He can go in the Georgia legislature and say, this bill will protect, strengthen democracy. He didn't have to give that talk from his bedroom at the governor's mansion surrounded by phalanx of armed guards. Why? Because they're not scared of y'all no more. Well, actually, they are terrified. He's terrified. Yeah. Anyway, but in Haiti, at some point, and most of these people who have been in these so-called transitional governments have been military people, and they've been trained outside of Haiti in the DR or in Georgia, Avenue of what's the name of it? School for the Americas used to be the name for it. They changed the name and then act like people don't remember. They train them other places and then bring them in. They governing on the interests of international capital. But every so often, black people in Haiti is like, where my cutlass at, man? I don't even need no damn gun. Let's go. And so they keep pushing back that spirit, that irritated genie that Jacob Carruthers writes about. The island of memes, as my dear brother and elder Wade Nobles writes about. They just not gonna stand for it. And then on CNN, it's like, oh, look at all this violence in Somalia. Look at all this violence in Liberia. Look at all this violence in the elections. And people say, oh my God. No, see, them is people who, you ain't just gonna steal an election. You understand? There's a very good documentary called An African Election on Ghana, the Ghanaian elections many years ago. Not many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I'll never forget, it's a beautiful scene in there where after everybody's voted, they're voting in these big plastic tubs where you got a slit, you put your vote in, then they're counting the votes and calling the votes in to Accra to the tabulation from all over the country. And they show after they voted, now they're going to count the votes. This is what the people do, Professor Hunter. They put the big plastic tubs in the middle of the village on the ground. And you see all these people, the whole village out there in a circle, and the police are there. The police ain't do nothing. There's too many people. Then the vote counters come. They pull a vote out. They show it to everybody. They say who it's for. They put it in the pack, and the whole circle, hundreds of people, they say 32. I'm saying, so y'all gonna stop talking about black people and political participation. This is a question of culture. In a lot of places, right? Y'all not gonna steal this. If you steal it, no problem. We'll see you tomorrow, like Burkina Faso, when them young people went down, burned down that building. Oh, hell no. So this happens in Haiti over and over again. So guess what? Between the exile of Baby Doc, and by the way, every time they want to get rid of a dictator they put in, or even when it was a democratically elected like Aristide, the real power comes in. So what happens? Baby Doc got to go. So where does it end up? The French. Oh, you can come with us, bro. You got a house here. Like Mobutu was in Congo. He's in France. I mean, they take when Duvalier and them will come, they come to the United States, they meet with the president, Democrat or Republican. Because foreign policy, they're the same. So at any rate, he's deposed, and from 86 to 90, you got a problem. You got Nanfi, you got Menegot, you got Nanfi again, you got Averill. Nanfi was a general. They're gonna keep that thug life going. But this time you got this little priest, Aristide, been preaching out there in the countryside. So he got people who love him with a similar gloss to the way they loved Papa Doc, without the thuggery, and he's for the right thing. Lavalier, the flood. In other words, we're going to have people who represent us, who are going to go out, we're going to take this country in the spirit of Haiti, and we're going to make it what it needs to be. They say, we want him. And so they call, and the United Nations, who's also part of the problem, they come in to monitor the elections, and the first time they have these externally monitored elections that are free and fair, Aristide wins 67% of the vote. He is elected. He's sworn in. He's serving food on the presidential mansion. In the presidential mansion, he's telling people, "I'm gonna disband all these thug life stuff. All you Tutum Mukut that used to run with Duvalier and them, y'all are all I'm putting y'all out. Y'all better get the hell out the country." He lasts 4 months before the coup. 4 minutes by U.S. people, paramilitary coming in from the Independent Republic, doing all this. He lasts 4 months. And what happens after that? For 3 years, they don't have a president. Cedras is there, but the Organization of American States, headquartered in D.C., a client organization of the United States, they call themselves, we're going to have an embargo. We're going to, because Haiti overthrew democracy, so we must do that. And they put an embargo. The embargo failed. Guess who was exempted? George Bush was president. George W. Bush. American corporations. Yeah. So you didn't have no damn embargo, and the goods is coming in from the DR anyway. So at that point, Aristide, who is in exile, Aristide says, I must be returned. And what happens? In 1994, he is returned to office. Who returns him to office? Bill Clinton. The UN returns him because he requested and demanded, and the people said, you got to bring. So the UN intervened, saying we had to intervene. I mean, they've asked him. He's returned. The US plotters scatter, and Aristide comes in and says, I got to disband the army. Remember now, this is from 1915. The U.S. set up this army, this problem to begin with. Even though the external pressure had always had Haiti roiling, the U.S. comes in, and they got from 1914 to 1934. You see in this book right here pictures of all these white boys who considered to be the rulers of Haiti. No, actually, it's not in this book. That's one thing I love about the Haitians. Class problems, international finance capital, thugs running the place. But they don't really mess with white people. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, we can get tripped up on that, and that's a footnote. I shouldn't even have mentioned that, but I will mention it. But at any rate, I did mention it. You see all these provisional governors, these white men who are quote unquote ruling Haiti. And then you're going to see something that continues to this day. Here's where I end. Rene Preval is brought in because he's second in command to Aristide. Because what happens to Aristide? He's there, returned in 94. He says, I'm going to disband the army. Oh, I'm sorry. No. I apologize. He is actually, no, he's exiled again. He's going to disband the army. We got to get rid of this guy. So once again, they drive him from the island. Preval is put in as the president. But guess what? The people are not going to be satisfied. We want him back. We want Aristide back. Preval is there from 95 to 98. And what happens? My God, what did the Haitians do? Those people forced them. And Aristide was brought back. Aristide is reelected in 2000, and he served to 2004. But the whole time he was there, he was being attacked. He was being destabilized. He gets airlifted out again. This is where Randall Robinson starts his book, Haiti and Unbroken Agony. The United States is involved knee deep in it. And since 2004, the United Nations, which has a force there, they came into Haiti uninvited. Because typically you have to be invited. It's called a Chapter 7 request. You got to ask people to come in. They didn't, not like when Aristide called before. This time, and in fact, when I think about Aristide, it reminds me of Patrice Lumumba in some ways. You don't have a way to do it, so you're trying to buy time. You know, Lumumba called for the United Nations, and the UN comes in, and they in collusion. You got Dodge Hammarskjöld in them. I mean, they don't know what to do. Ralph Bunche trying to negotiate, and Lumumba said, "No, send a Negro. I need somebody with some. Y'all sent the Negro. Send me somebody who can make a deal." It's very difficult. The Belgians, the Americans, everybody colluding, and he of course gets assassinated. But Aristide is desperate. I got to come back. So the UN comes back, but now he's exiled again. Central African Republic, then South Africa, Jamaica. Aristide apparently is back in the country now. He's still alive. Baby Doc is dead, but his son is back. Why? And this is where I'm going at the end here. They put together a fight they've been fighting for sovereignty, the Haitians have. But these external groups, led by the organizations of the Organization of American States, the UN, the United States is in it, the EU is in it, led by France, who held up Haiti for their money. They call it the core group, that group with the United States and the EU. They're the ones who are handpicking who ends up in charge. They were the ones who backed Sweet Mickey Martelly. Again, I told you Hillary Clinton went down there and was like, nah, this guy got to make it into the runoff, and this is our man. They are the ones who then now was Jovenel, who was Sweet Mickey's man, who is now the president, the so-called banana man. And that occupation continues to this day, except now, as every other time, the Haitians is like, y'all got to go. Well, if they go, what's going to happen? I mean, to our company. I'm sorry. What's going to happen to democracy and the rule of law and the people that look, we'll work that out. But Haiti continues in that unbroken agony because they have declared sovereignty, the most important thing. And what has happened, whether it be Haiti, whether it be the state capital of Georgia, whether it be anywhere where people organize to resist and ultimately destroy those who seek to oppress them, the people who seek to oppress them do not negotiate. They meet you with violence. So if you want to look for the source of violence and how to end violence in America, y'all stop messing with oppressed people, because the most violent people in this country, to quote Henry Maneil Turner, are you. Okay. I'll live with that.
I needed a moment of silence. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, a lot of us major in the minors, we spend a lot of time and concerned with things that aren't going to free us. We spend a lot of time examining and criticizing folk. Like you said, if they're doing work, we don't have to go nitpick. We got larger concerns.
Yes.
Globally, we have larger concerns. But collectively, we are so great when we understand our connection to one another. So I just want to thank you again, because I didn't know how you were going to weave that thread all the way through. And somehow you managed to do it because you're a genius.
No.
And, genius is a process.
It is a process.
Genius.
Yes.
And also a model, for all of the people out there collecting books. This is not about the books you're reading now. This is about the legacy of books that you're collecting, the knowledge that you're collecting.
That's right.
Here on Saturday in narrative. And again, it's a process. Things don't happen overnight. And a lot of us are impatient because, 400 years, you ain't been here 400 years, 30, 40, 50 years, you know, 60 years. Henry Turner was doing things 100 years ago that most of us don't have the fortitude to do today. But we got a lot to say. So I need us to say less, and do more, and understand that we all have a part in contributing to this, to the freedom that we all say we want. What part are you playing? What are you doing? What are you doing to further? And these classes should open your mind to understand and to see more clearly where the holes are, where the gaps are to be filled, where the work is to be done, where there are already batons laying on the ground that can be picked up. Henry Turner laid a baton down.
Yes.
Pick it up.
Robert and Mabel Turner left a baton.
Pick it up.
Right. I mean, Robert and Mabel Williams. I'm sorry.
Yes, the Williamses.
The Williamses.
I mean, and there's power in that. I said on my radio show, if every Black person registered for a gun, there'd be gun control legislation tomorrow.
Today. Not today, I think.
Yeah, it would be today. They have a special session.
You see, y'all go back and go to Narrative now and check out the session we had on the Black Panthers. They changed those gun control laws so fast once them brothers and sisters busted up in the legislature with those weapons. That's right.
And nobody's calling for violence.
So
be clear, because that's the other thing. People will soundbite situations and try and attempt to cancel and shut people up. But we're smarter than that. We know that this can't be soundbited, bitten, because there's a larger message here. And if people are going to do that, we already know why.
You know what? And please forgive me, Professor Hunter. And I promise you, this is only for a couple of. I must mention this. No, I must mention this because you just evoked her. It's amazing how she comes through you. Maybe the first conversation we had was about Ida Bell Wells.
It was.
Right? And Ida Wells said a Winchester rifle should occupy a place of pride above the hearth of every Black home, every Negro home. When she was writing her newspaper in Memphis, The Truth Seeker, after they had lynched her friends who ran the People's Grocery. I did want to mention just one other thing that and there are any number of places you can pull from this. I decided to pull. There's a number. I mean, there are a lot of good books on Ida Wells, and by good books on Ida Wells, I mean books with her writing in them, including her memoir. This is just from a little, and this is one. I'll try to find a copy that y'all can find very cheaply.
We actually will have that in Narrative.
Okay, good. Southern Horrors. Good. When you have Ida Wells, no question. This is from a pamphlet she wrote called Mob Rule in New Orleans. This brother on the left, Robert Charles, and there have been two good books on Robert Charles. The one that we used for a number of years was by William Ivy Harris called Carnival of Fury, Robert Charles and the New Orleans Race Riot of 1900. The one that just came out this year, Stephen Prince's new book, The Ballad of Robert Charles. This is very important, Searching for the New Orleans Riot of 1900. These are really companion books, but the best, as far as the one I always start with, and the one I recommend, is Mob Rule in New Orleans, because Ida Wells was a contemporary. She's writing about lynchings. And she says, watch this. She says, immediately after the awful barbarism which disgraced the state of Georgia in April of last year, during which time more than a dozen colored people were put to death with unspeakable barbarity, I published a full report showing that Sam Hose, who was burned to death during that time, never committed a criminal assault, and that he killed his employer in self-defense. There's a whole story about that, the lynching of Sam Hose. Du Bois writes about it, because by then him, Nina, and Berger are living that. It's very important. Because Du Bois said, I thought the world was just thinking wrong about race, but I realized it was probably more than that. Then they lynched Sam Hose. Ida Wells said, I did this report. She said, but since that time, I have been engaged on a work not yet finished, which I interrupt now to tell the story of the mob in New Orleans, which, despising all law, roamed the streets day and night, searching for colored men and women whom they beat, shot, and killed at will. This story begins, and I won't read. I'll just read this. Let me see if I can find it, because he talks about the two brothers who were killed. Yeah, here it is. She says, the bloodiest week which New Orleans has known since the massacre of the Italians in 1892. So you got to understand this thing about whiteness. Whiteness only expanded recently. They would kill Chinese working on the railroads. They would kill people, Japanese on the West Coast. They killed Italians, Irish. I mean, all kind of things, right? By they, I mean the whites. And who are the whites? The whites are whoever they say they are as they're expanding or constricting based on what they believe to be the thing they're scared they're going to lose, which is their whiteness. This is the thing that's animating all those algorithms. They're looking for an alternate explanation. But at any rate, she says, the bloodiest week was ushered in Monday, July 24th, by the inexcusable and unprovoked assault upon 2 colored men by police officers of New Orleans. Fortified by the assurance born of long experience in the New Orleans service, these 3 policemen, Sergeant Alcoin, Officer Mora, and Officer Cantrell, observing 2 colored men sitting on doorsteps on Dryads Street between Washington Avenue and 6th Street, determined without a shadow of authority to arrest them. One of the colored men was named Robert Charles. The other was a lad of 19 named Leonard Pierce. The colored men had left their homes a few blocks distant about an hour prior and had been sitting upon the doorsteps for a short time talking together. They had not broken the peace in any way whatsoever. No warrant was in the policeman's hands justifying their arrest. No crime had been committed of which they were the suspects. The policeman, however, secure in the firm belief that they could do anything to a Negro that they wished, approached the 2 men, and in less than 3 minutes from the time they accosted them, attempted to put both colored men under arrest. The younger of the 2 men, Pierce, submitted to arrest, but for the officer Cantrell who accosted him, put his guns in the young man's face, ready to blow his brains out if he moved. The other colored man, Charles, was made the victim of a savage attack by Officer Mora, who used a billet and then drew a gun and tried to kill Charles. Charles drew his gun nearly as quickly as the policeman and began a duel in the street in which both participants were shot. The policeman got the worst of the duel and fell helpless to the sidewalk. Charles made his escape. Before it was over, Robert Charles, this is why I like this one, Carnival of Fury. Robert Charles shot 27 white people, including 7 policemen. They burned the building he was in where he was shooting. They pulled him out, chopped him to pieces. Then they went on a lynch spree and found as many other black people as they could find in New Orleans. Mob rule in New Orleans. But it started with the police messing with somebody. See, y'all don't understand. We know what's going to happen next. It's not just predictable. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I was at Dillard. This is why we go to the conversation. I was at Dillard University. We were there, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. We were there for our conference at Dillard. Maybe this was 2017. The year before the great musician Randy Weston made transition. Because he made transition later on that year, because he was there. We were all there together. Randy Weston, y'all should look that brother up. What a beautiful spirit, an amazing force, Garveyite, intellectual. He and his wife were there. And so, Fatima, and the talk I gave was wrapped around another brother who in 1973 took to the rooftop of the Howard Johnsons in New Orleans and took out a whole bunch of white people, including military. This guy was a military guy, Navy. I don't know if you remember him, Karen. Gil Scott Heron did a remix of Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues. And he did a rhyme in there about a brother named Mark Essex. The idea of the sniper. Robert Charles was provoked. Mark Essex, it is said, did what he did from the roof of the Howard Johnsons, shooting white people from the top of the roof, because he said these 2 brothers had been killed at Southern University. If y'all go look at Tell Them We Are Rising, the HBCU documentary by what's our brother's name that does all the documentaries? I know the brother. I can't. It'll come to me in a minute. One more time.
Stanley O'Neill? No?
Stanley. Okay. Not O'Neill, Stanley Nelson.
Stanley Nelson.
Yeah. Stanley O'Neill. Yeah, it was that's right. No, but yeah, that's right. Thank you. That's right. Stanley Nelson. He gets toward the end of that documentary. He talks about the slaughter of those 2 brothers, those students at Southern University. We know Kent State. A few people know Jackson State. Many people don't necessarily study what happened at Southern University. Those black students, and in the liberation struggle, they're struggling against oppression, this kind of thing. They shoot these 2 brothers, these damn police in New Orleans. And so Mark Essex, it is said, influenced by that, when you listen to Gil Scott Heron's Inner City Blues, which is a brilliant piece. And he comes in the middle of the rhyme and he says, oh, it make you want to holler sometime, throw up both your hands. And then he goes into the rhyme where he says, did anybody ever ask what made Mark Essex choose to fight the Inner City Blues? Yeah, Essex took to the rooftop guerrilla style and watched while all the crackers went wild. They eventually took him out with something called an elephant gun. They just blew him off the roof. And so when we were down there at Dillard, I opened my remarks with that Gil Scott Heron as a way to walk across to Marvin Gaye. And I anchored the whole thing around Marvin Gaye's What's Happening, Brother, which to me is like really the threshold piece on that What's Going On album. But the day before we went out, the great Larry Crow, Bernie Gallman, Mario Beatty, all the rest of us, we went out riding the streets of New Orleans with a brother who was from there. And I was like, bruh, take us by the place where the Howard Johnsons was. Because he was telling us all about how they wouldn't let the black people across the bridge, Gretna and all them places in Algiers, where these white boys are standing with guns during Katrina, like, y'all ain't escaping over here. I mean, this is humanity, right? Our common humanity, y'all MAGA people. It's going to dissolve in your face. So he took us by there. This is just before they took the monuments down too. So we went by. I said, man, just stop. Let me get a good picture here. And I put it in the presentation. That's where the spot was where Mark Essex, with the spirit of Robert Charles, Carnival of Fury. Either we're going to vote, either we're going to organize and create a society that's different than the one that has existed up until now, or if it comes down to violence, y'all ain't got that kind of muscle. Trust. Let me stop with that.
Let's bring in. I was gonna play a video, but I'm watching.
Oh, good.
So let me bring in this brother, Jonathan. Jonathan is from Grenada. Welcome. Hey.
Oh. Hello.
Brother Jonathan.
How are you guys doing? It's an honor to be here. I watch you guys every Saturday. It's an honor to be here.
Really the honor is ours, brother. Malcolm X is mother's people.
Yes, from Grenada,
yes.
So what's your question, brother?
Okay. So my question is actually two questions, and you kind of touched on it as you ended talking about Haiti. The first part is, why hasn't revolution transformed African countries, right, in the diaspora, right? And that could also be linked to African countries in Africa, obviously. And that's the first part of the question. So that is Haiti with the revolution, that is Grenada, Maurice Bishop, that is the Democratic Republic of Congo, Patrice Lumumba, right? All these different stuff, right? And as well as the second part of the question is, can democracy or socialism or Trotskyism or Marxist-Leninism, any of these European systems, can they really work in predominantly African societies, right? And to link these two questions, I'll use Grenada, because I'm Grenadian, right? And the revolution is part of a dual struggle. So there's an original revolution in the 1950s for Grenadians, adult suffrage, and a way to determine our life on a colonial system under the British, right? Mm-hmm. And that funnels itself into a rising of a leader. His name was Eric Matthew Gary, right? Yes. And in the 60s, he's pushed out of power by the colonial powers because he's seen as a man of the people, right? And that's not what you call the petty bourgeoisie. That's not what they want, really, right?
No, sir.
So, however, when he returns to power in the late 60s, early 70s, he has a change of character, and he's now in the mode of acquiring land, suppressing the people, even going as far as instilling violence on the people, which breeds the second part of the revolution, which is Maurice Bishop and company, right? And there's a great book on it here. It's called Deception and Conception, right?
Yes.
I don't agree with everything he says, right? But he has a scathing rebuke of the revolution in terms of how it manifested itself in terms of it's a sort of conflict, right? That kind of implodes in the end in 1983,
yes.
Right?
With some help from
yes. So, because even in his book, he recognizes that even like with Gary under his style of leadership, when we go into independence under darkness, under strike. The electric companies on a strike, and you basically have 30,000 people marching, considering that Grenada at that time has a population of 90,000. That's a third of the population marching for basically freedom, which emboldens the leaders of the revolution, Maurice Bishops, Unison Whiteman, to take a strike, and which finally results in the 1979 revolution, right?
Yes.
But in the end, in this book right here, he acknowledges that any of these European systems, they're not really working for us. We need to go back to something that is from us, because it's in conflict with what we believe in. But can you just answer the question? that I posted.
Well, Brother Jonathan, first of all, let me thank you. Thank you. As not only a son of Grenada, but a son of the African world. Those systems, as John Henry Clark used to say, don't work for Europeans. So we know the answer is they don't work. The question is, how do we build what comes after? And it's so fascinating, brother. And for those of you who don't know, I not only recommend that book, but look up Maurice Bishop, look up the New Jewel movement, look up what happened to Gary that first and that second time, because, you know, one of the things the United States was terrified for, I remember watching a speech Maurice Bishop gave, listening to a speech Maurice Bishop gave. I think it was in New York. It might have been at Hunter College. And you probably familiar with this.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? And, you know, it was not really a throwaway line, but one of the things that I've heard over and over again, and I would not reduce it to this because, of course, the Cubans are considered enemies of Americans by people who either are white nationalists or people who don't know anything about it. But they used to say that the problem with Grenada for the United States is that most people in the United States don't speak Spanish, so they could demonize Castro more easily. Well, Maurice Bishop comes up here sounding like Castro. He speaks English. We got a problem because people are going to listen to this and say, shouldn't everybody have housing and food? Yes. Shouldn't everybody have the dignity of labor and be able to raise family and community? Yes. Well, then I think we should come. Oh, hell no. This guy got to go. And I think when you ask why hasn't revolution worked out for the countries of Africa, this diaspora, or anywhere else in that matter, and why, and perhaps even why those places which have held on by having to play geopolitics, whether it be Cuba with the support of the Soviet Union first and China, and then when that collapses, trying to reinvent itself, and it's just a testament to the fortitude of the Cuban people, or Haiti with Duvalier, who threatens to go communist if the United States don't play ball. I mean, they're playing each other, same things with Mengistu in Ethiopia. You see these politicians. I think what ends up happening is when you create some free space, these interests of finance capital, international capital, and their tools at the political level in these nation state structures move against you. They don't believe in flags. They're just using the countries as tools. They're going to move against you. And that includes the political bodies they've set up and fight in to continue to have control on, whether it be the IMF or the World Bank or the United Nations or the Organization of American States. You know, they then will attack wherever place it looks like this thing may erupt. So a cat like Gary, for example, it's not unusual to basically fold under the pressure of what we might call neoliberalism. What does that mean? You know, we're gonna let you come back in, but you got to privatize the natural resources. You need to take some loans out, so they're going to sell you with some exorbitant external debt. In fact, we want you to set these free trade agreements. Well, what does Grenada have to give? A whole lot of stuff. I mean, the joke is, oh, that's where you get your nutmeg from. Well, that ain't no real joke. When you think about McCormick Center, y'all from Chicago, McCormick family, y'all go look up the empire that's been built on the foodstuffs that have come out of the Caribbean. And then at that point, more neoliberal, let's outsource labor. Let's bring labor in. We're not going to diversify the economy if we let you get a foothold here. And then we must open your borders for capital, international finance capital. So we can no way, self-sufficiency is a threat to the international order, but Grenada is small. Grenada will be the example. Do you understand why we've been putting all this damn pressure on Cuba? Do you understand why we destabilize Haiti? All this comes because you can't have a model emerge. So I think the main reason revolution has not worked out yet is because external forces that through the accident of history 500 years ago or so, and then forward to today, were able to form themselves. And this is where I think the critique of Karl Marx, and I agree with Chris Hedges and others, Karl Marx, Engels and Marx have perhaps the best analysis of capitalism that there is. I didn't say the best solution. They don't, because the solution, which is the better critique of Cedric Robinson and others, the whole splits, like say the Trotskyists, when you say C.L.R. James, immediately almost you start talking about Trotskyists these different ways. The solution phase is still being worked out. And I think that the evidence of progress and solutions for Black people has consistently been tied to honoring the humanity of people of African descent, which means launching that resistance in launching the building of new forms of government in the culture of the people, whether it be Manly in Jamaica, whether it be Bishop in Grenada. And this is where, if used improperly, in other words, if saying, yeah, I'm culturally, I'm with y'all, which is the red and black flag in Haiti with that Duvalier tried to get in, when used improperly, culture can be used as a weapon against the people, because you act like you're really with the people because of the culture, but then you're going right into the neoliberalism or the repressive state, the monarchy or the oligarchy, world oligarchy that you're in. But if you use it with respect for the people, with an eye toward a different form of government, I think that is the most powerful way for us to launch and sustain these revolutions. But then we have to work together. That's why this whole notion of American nationalism, that ADOS and all that, no, those are artificial boundaries. We have to connect each other. So I'll stop.
No, but if we start with, we're all human, everybody contributes.
Yes.
We all need to eat. You bring what you bring, and then everybody eats. And those who can't contribute, we're going to take care of you because there's more than enough.
Yes.
And if we do that globally, there we and not even, be your culture. Bring what you bring to the table in the fullness of who you are, because we need you to come fully yourself.
That's true.
And then we all get to enjoy this. But because we are dealing with the mentality of lack, people who come from places that they didn't have, and they bring that with their weapons and their violence into something and try to dominate because they never had sunshine and light and fruit that's in abundance. They're in a lack mentality. That's the thing that has to be conquered and broken apart. This mentality of lack.
That's right. That's right.
And let me just say, Jonathan is 26. He told me in the chat, he's 26 years old, Dr. Carr, and he's an educator. So
you're one of us.
Yeah.
Where are you teaching? I'm just kidding.
I live in Lubbock right now. I teach at a public high school. Right. This is like actually my first year teaching at public high school in the United States. But back home, I taught for 2 years back home before I moved here. So
we need more teachers. We need more people who care about people, who want to actually, because this is the thing. And let me just thank you, Jonathan. Again, it's random. I'll go on Twitter, ask you who wants to ask a question. Jonathan's like, me. So I sent him a link this morning. Never met him before. And I just, I'm humbled and honored that we have this kind of family, this kind of, group of people, that this is what we attract. And I know that, this is special. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hey man, let's keep in touch. Karen, isn't that something?
Man, listen, and as I'm sitting here, first of all, you're talking about the demonization because they speak a different language. The media, when you talked about Joe Biden and I brought up the media has been used from time immemorial to shape. Hitler was great at it. The media has been used to shape. Yeah. Trump was great at using the media to shape, even demonizing the media to shape a narrative about people so that we don't like each other, so that we are afraid of each other, so that we hate one another. And this has to be flipped on its head too, which is why I think what we're doing here, not just on Saturday, but a narrative in terms of cracking open, showing people, giving you entry points so that you can do your own scholarship, your own study of humanity.
That's really where it's about. That's right.
And put it together. I mean, you and I had a conversation this week about Souls of Black Folk because, we're going to offer, just like we're going to offer Ida B. Wells, we're going to offer Souls of Black Folk in narrative, but we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to have a book club discussion. Top of May, middle of May, you and I are going to have a book club live in narrative talking about Souls of Black Folk, but people will have the book, our conversation about it, and then they can come with their questions and their perspectives. But so many people have opinions about things and they know nothing. I sit here most of the class quiet because I'm learning. You can't, all these experts that the media offers up, people who know nothing, and they have them in the split screen and 2 minutes fighting over. And I'm like, neither one of these people know anything in depth. And so how are we being fed?
Well, and as you know better than I do, the split screen is there, and we are drawn in by the conflict because that ain't nothing but theater. The real issue is the thing that comes on when they go to break. That's why I always call it commercial news entertainment media. It ain't even about the argument. It's about drawing you in. And as you stay there, okay, we'll be right back. And now here comes the reason. It's different. You got to invert that. It ain't about information. That's just getting eyeballs.
and we need to be impervious to that check. So
we definitely impervious for it. In fact, I would ask you, did you all talk about this week? I'm sure you did. The testimony on Capitol Hill. That's a whole nother conversation. The Zuckerberg and them.
No, I did not.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Tech Tuesday.
Good. Tech Tuesday. Good. Yeah, because it was after Tuesday. Yes. No, I just mentioned it because Zuckerberg now is trying to get folk to he wants Congress to relieve him of the responsibility of regulation by regulating. What does that mean? If you look at the Communication Act, I think it's 1996, whatever section it is, maybe section 20. Numbers escape me off the top of my head, but the idea is that the internet providers are what they call kind of third parties, so people can say what they want. They have immunity from being prosecuted for hate speech or anything else. I didn't do that. I just had the platform. Now they also have full control to take who they want off. It's because they're private companies. So Zuckerberg testifying then what they want is they're telling people we want people to regulate us, and this is going exactly what you were talking about in terms of the split screen piece. Says we want y'all to give us the rules. If they do strengthen the rules, they will still just may probably say, well, y'all have to make a good faith attempt. In other words, it's still not going to have any teeth in it, but it will relieve them of the responsibility. Why do I say that? Because those of you who haven't yet signed up for narrative, and y'all better sign up because the clock is ticking on the special entry thing, right? This is the last week for it. That's right. When you're watching this and y'all watching it now, in a minute, y'all see that black girl come on 25 years ago. Congress passed the last regulations. What has happened since? She had nothing to do with it. She's reading Mark Zuckerberg's script. Congress is not going to do what it should do, which is declare all these platforms public utilities and regulate them that way and figure it out from that approach, unless finally Democrats and Republicans are the same. Yeah, all of it is the party of finance capital. The only thing can dismantle this, going to what Jonathan said. The only thing can dismantle this is us. They haven't moved yet to the fascist state where they don't have elections. That's why they're fighting like hell to stop you from voting, because the next step is the next step is we have no elections. We canceled the elections. Remember, Trump floated that. That's where it's headed. If enough of us get involved, we can not only stop that, you might even be able to free up a little space to operate like some people who understand that it's not about Marxism. It's not about Trotskyism or Leninism. If you're talking about socialism, that's a label for something else. It's about what you just said, Professor Hunter. It's about people creating a different society than the world we live in now, the one we want to see. And can't nobody stop us but us. But enough of us have to create critical mass. Y'all come on over the narrative, because, yeah, y'all ain't going to see that Du Bois. We had a long Du Bois conversation. Oh, that's over there, though.
It was just supposed to be an introduction, but, Dr. Carr knows a lot. So we kept with it, and I'm really happy with what is evolving, because it's evolving as we evolve, right? And as we find the needs, we are filling the needs, and the goal is not this year, next year, 5 years from now, 100 years from now, 100 years from now. You said something in that discussion that you said Du Bois looked at the problem of Black people and picked 10 topics, which we're going to explore in narrative. 10 things that affect Black people. Mm-hmm. And every year he picked one for an entire year and studied it. Mm-hmm. And then came back and rinsed and repeated. And he was going to do this on a 10-time cycle for a 100-year period. I'm just going to stop there, because I've been thinking about that since Wednesday when we were talking about it. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, because we never got through, I think, 2 or 3 rotations of that.
No.
If we don't pick up that baton. So
I'm saying nothing.
I'm not saying
fighting the urge. I ain't gonna say nothing. Y'all gotta come over there.
All right. So sign up for narrative. This is the last week for the introductory price. We're also working on donations, because so many of you beautiful people want to donate. Michael Harriet reached out. I want to give classes to some people. How do I get narrative?
Oh, Mike, my man.
Since last week, we hired a call center out of Ghana, because we are global citizens. So
come on.
When you call up to talk to narrative, the call answers in Ghana. All right. Oh. So we doing that. And yeah, so this is
Professor Hunter, you building this thing. We're in it.
Yeah, thank you. You started it.
No, we're all listening. Everybody listening, please understand. Come on now. When you hear the loony say, I got 5 on it, Everybody put 5 on it. We're about to get free because it's not money, although money is the marker for it. It's resources.
Yes.
The most valuable resource in existence is time.
What
is work except how we spend our time, which is why the dignity of labor, read Martin Luther King, is very important. Talk about living wage, yeah, because you want your time. You want to buy your time back. A brother in Twitter talked about universal basic income. We look at the places that have tried universal basic income and tried to, whether it be Kenya or Iran or in some of these other places, Alaska, with some nominal redistribution. What they see is people say, well, if you give them money, they're not going to work. Work is not about money. Work is about spending your time. And what they find is once people have been rescued from some part of economic instability, their mental health increases. They don't go to the doctor as much. They go to school more. It's your time. What you're doing with narrative. When you join us, all of us, and the numbers keep going, we got to bust this out. We are investing a small bit of resources into our time. And with that time, our minds expand. And with enough people, we reach a critical mass. Tuition, how much? No. You know what? Now this tuition, no, we got to organize now these state tuition. And that's why, by the way, let me just say that right quick. That's why I have the Alabama State shirt on. Because this week in Maryland, there's a $577 million HBCU settlement that Governor Hogan, shout out to Larry Hogan, not for any credit. We broke you, bruh. Broke you. Remember when you tried to give out a quarter of that and said that's a fair deal? Nah, the judge was like Judge Blake, Catherine Blake in the federal court was like, nah, y'all got to go back and negotiate. Shout out to the lawyers. Shout out to the sister who is the what's her name? Jones, who is the Speaker of the House of the Maryland State Legislature for getting it through. I wore this because the cases that have been sued, this is what sent me to law school, the Tennessee case, Guy versus Alexander, the Mississippi case, Ayers versus Fordyce, the Alabama case, Alabama State, which is the oldest HBCU, public HBCU 1890 land grant institution in the country, founded in Marion, Alabama, home of the great Coretta Scott King, now in Montgomery. They made them give up $600 million in Alabama back in 2005 to redo Alabama State and Alabama A&M. They made them put money in the coffer for Jackson State and put money in the coffer for Mississippi Valley and Mississippi, or the Ayers versus Fordyce. Out of the Guy settlement, Tennessee State got new buildings. And now Maryland has joined that. But guess what? As you young people who are going to Bowie or Eastern Shore or Morgan State University, as you young people who are going to Coppin, will get scholarship money out of that as they put online programs there. What we're building in narrative still makes those tuitions look like skyrockets. And guess what? If you're at those schools, or if you're K-12, if you're a student like one of Jonathan's students, or if you're an elementary school student, you come to narrative with your family, with your people, and that makes whatever you're getting in those formal institutions, it's going to reframe the way you even do your work there. You're going to go in a history class and like, what about this? I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know. Okay, well, let me do my project on this. It's going to change the way you view.
That's right. This is the largest.
So that's what we're doing.
The largest Africana Studies classroom in the world.
In the world. Because we all in the world. And we all in class. So
thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kareem and Donica, Reyes and Carl, the team.
Yes.
I see you, Renee, and everybody, Ayara, in moderating, gathering folk up. Not that we even have to anymore. So I'm grateful that the water is so clean.
Is she gathering over there?
Not a whole lot of people coming in with nefarious designs. Folks are here because they want to learn and want to be here, and I'm grateful every single time we get to have a conversation, because I immensely love you, and I thank you. I love you too.
Oh wait, I should probably clean this up. I should clean this up.
Okay.
And anytime I start talking about first and oldest, people start. Okay, let's be very clear. 1867, the same year Howard was founded, is when they call them the Marion Nine. 9 formerly enslaved Africans in Alabama raised $500 and bought some land and put together what was then called the Lincoln School. So maybe about 20 years later, what you see is with the help of the AMA, American Missionary Association, the Freedmen's Bureau, no, not 20 years later, it's a couple of years later for that, they were able to acquire some property, and eventually Alabama was eventually named them the state school for Negroes, for teachers, liberal art. It's the oldest liberal arts school. I don't want nobody, because I lived in Philly, so anytime anybody say Cheney, Lincoln comes in, and then Lincoln say something, Cheney come in. I said Alabama State. I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot. Let me just say, and plus my mom from Alabama, so I had to represent. But I love you, Professor Hunter, and I'm so grateful to you. I am so grateful to you for giving us this all, but for me, a renewed lease, because this has freed me up to get back to the work I was doing. I got straight away, but I didn't go see Sweet Mickey though in the School of Beer auditorium. Shout out to the Clinton Global Initiative.
On that note, Dr. Carr, I'll see you in the streets.
See you in the streets
next Wednesday and Saturday. See
Yes,
everybody
ma'am.
in class.
Yes,
Everybody
ma'am.
have a great weekend.
You too.